Hello, and welcome. It's good that you're here in this quiet moment, wherever you find yourself now. Perhaps the day has been long. Perhaps your mind has been busy, full of tasks and voices and the endless hum of things that needed doing. That's all right. You can let that go now, just for a little while. There's no urgency here, no pressure. Only the soft invitation to rest, to breathe, and to let your thoughts settle like dust motes drifting down through still air. Tonight, we're going to explore something both ancient and immediate, something that has accompanied humanity through every age and every culture, yet often goes unnoticed in the background of our lives. We're going to wander gently through the world of timekeeping and clocks, not the frantic ticking that hurries us along, but the deeper, quieter story of how we learn to measure the passing moments, how we built devices to mirror the rhythms of the cosmos, and how, in doing so, we created some of the most beautiful, intricate, and surprisingly peaceful objects ever made. You don't need to concentrate too hard. You don't need to remember everything. If your eyes grow heavy, that's perfectly fine. If sleep finds you somewhere along this journey, consider that a success, not a failure. And if you'd like more of these gentle explorations, you're welcome to follow along, to return whenever you need a calm voice in the night. But there's no obligation, only an open door, and a soft light, and a story that unfolds at the pace of your breathing. So settle in, let your shoulders drop, let the weight of the day slide away, and let's begin very gently with the oldest clock humanity ever knew. Long before anyone built a device to measure time, the sky itself was our clock. The sun rose, traveled across the dome of heaven, and set again, painting the world in shades of gold and shadow. This daily rhythm was the first timekeeper, reliable and absolute, a pulse that never faltered. Our ancestors didn't need to invent this clock. They only needed to notice it, to watch, to let the patterns sink into their bones. And so they did, generation after generation, until the rising and setting of the sun became woven into the very fabric of human life. The moon, too, offered its own kind of time, softer than the sun, more mysterious. It waxed and grew full, then waned and disappeared, only to return again. This cycle took roughly 29.5 days, a rhythm that became the basis for the earliest calendars. People noticed that the moon's phases could mark the passage of longer periods, could help them anticipate seasons, plan harvests, prepare for migrations. The moon was a gentler clock, a nighttime companion that whispered of cycles and return, of things that fade and are reborn. Even the stars participated in this cosmic timekeeping. As the Earth turned and traveled around the sun, different constellations appeared in the night sky at different times of year. Farmers and sailors learned to read these patterns, to know that when Orion rose at dusk, winter was coming, or that when the Pleiades appeared, it was time to plant. The stars were like the hands of an enormous clock, moving so slowly that you couldn't see them shift, yet reliable across centuries, across millennia. This celestial time-keeping required no technology, no gears or springs or batteries. It required only attention, only the willingness to look up and notice. And there's something deeply peaceful about that, isn't there? The idea that time was once something you could see written across the sky, something vast and beautiful, something that connected you to the turning of the world itself. But humans, being curious creatures, wanted more precision. They wanted to measure smaller portions of the day, to divide the hours, to coordinate their activities with one another. And so, very gently, very gradually, they began to invent. One of the earliest inventions was the sundial, and it's hard to imagine a more peaceful timekeeper. A sundial is simplicity itself, a flat surface marked with lines, and a raised piece, called a gnomon, that casts a shadow. As the sun moves across the sky, the shadow moves across the dial, indicating the time. There's no ticking, no mechanical sound at all, only the silent sweep of shadow, the slow dance of light and dark. The ancient Egyptians used sundials as early as 1500 BCE, perhaps even earlier. They placed them in courtyards and gardens, on the walls of temples. The shadow moved, the day progressed, and time became something you could see, something tangible and present. There's a beautiful paradox here. The sundial measures time, yet it also invites you to slow down, to watch, to notice the sun's journey. You can't glance at a sundial the way you glance at a phone. You have to pause, to look, to let the information settle. Sundials work because the Earth rotates at a constant speed, completing one full turn every 24 hours. This rotation makes the sun appear to move across the sky from east to west. The gnomon shadow follows this movement, sweeping around the dial in a predictable arc. It's a direct, unmediated connection between the cosmos and the measurement of time. No batteries required, no winding, no maintenance beyond occasionally brushing away fallen leaves. Of course, sundials have their limitations. They don't work at night or on cloudy days. They can't measure time indoors, and their accuracy depends on your latitude and the time of year, because the sun's path across the sky changes with the seasons. But these limitations are gentle ones, forgivable. The sundial doesn't pretend to be perfect. It simply offers what it can, a quiet, sunlit way to mark the passing hours. There's also something poetic about the fact that sundials tell solar time, which is slightly different from the clock time we use today. Solar time is based on the actual position of the sun in the sky, which varies slightly throughout the year due to the Earth's elliptical orbit and the tilt of its axis. Clock time, by contrast, is averaged and standardized. A sundial, then, tells a more honest time, a time that acknowledges the small wobbles and variations of our planet's dance through space. While the sundial measured time by light, other ancient peoples learned to measure it by flow. Water clocks, or clepsydras, were used in ancient Egypt, Babylon, Greece, China, and many other cultures. The principle was beautifully simple. Water dripped from one container into another at a steady rate, and the level of water indicated how much time had passed. There was something almost meditative about this. The quiet drip, 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 the gradual filling, the patient accumulation of moments. The Greeks refined the water clock into quite sophisticated devices. Some had gears and dials, some rang bells or moved figurines to mark the hours. But at the heart of each one was that same gentle principle: water flowing, time passing. You could hear, if you listened closely, a soft, regular sound like a heartbeat, like breath. Water clocks had an advantage over sundials. They worked at night, indoors on cloudy days. They were used in courts to time speeches, in temples to mark the hours of prayer, in homes to coordinate daily activities. The flow of water became a metaphor for time itself, always moving, never stopping, yet smooth and continuous rather than abrupt. In ancient China, water clocks became extraordinarily elaborate. By the Song dynasty, around the 11th century, Chinese engineers had built water clocks with complex systems of wheels, levers, and tanks, some standing over 30 feet tall. These were not just timekeepers, but works of art, demonstrations of human ingenuity and patience. And yet, no matter how complex they became, they still relied on that fundamental, peaceful principle: water finding its level, gravity doing its work, time made visible through flow. There were also sand clocks, hourglasses, which worked on a similar principle, but used sand instead of water. Sand doesn't freeze in winter, doesn't evaporate in summer, and flows at a remarkably consistent rate if the hourglass is well made. The hourglass became a symbol of time itself, appearing in paintings and literature, a reminder that our moments are finite, yes, but also that they flow smoothly, one grain after another, each one small and light. Hourglasses were especially useful on ships, where the rocking motion could disturb water clocks, and where the salt air could corrode metal mechanisms. Sailors used them to measure their watches, the 4-hour shifts of duty, and to calculate their speed by timing how long it took the ship to travel a known distance. The hourglass became a companion to navigation, to the reading of stars and currents, to the patient art of finding your way across trackless seas. There's something calming about watching an hourglass, isn't there? The sand forms a little cone at the top of the lower chamber, and the grains cascade down in a thin stream, piling up grain by grain. It's mesmerizing, hypnotic. Unlike a digital clock that jumps from one number to the next, the hourglass shows you time as a continuous process, something happening right now, right before your eyes. As the centuries passed, people began to dream of clocks that didn't depend on sun or water or sand, clocks that could run on their own, powered by some internal mechanism. This dream led, eventually, to the invention of the mechanical clock, one of the most important technological achievements of the Middle Ages. The first mechanical clocks appeared in Europe in the late 13th century, in monasteries and cathedrals. They were driven by weights hanging on ropes or chains. As the weight slowly descended, pulled by gravity, it turned a series of gears, and these gears moved the hands of the clock. It was a way of harnessing gravity, of turning the constant pull of the earth into the measurement of time. These early clocks were large, often housed in towers, and they had no minute hands, only hour hands. They were not particularly accurate, sometimes gaining or losing 15 minutes or more per day. But they were revolutionary nonetheless. For the first time, communities had a shared, mechanical sense of time, a clock that ticked away regardless of weather or season, day or night. The sound of these clocks became part of the soundscape of medieval towns. The bells in the tower would ring on the hour, calling people to prayer, to work, to rest. The rhythm of the day became synchronized, coordinated. Time was no longer just something you observe in the sky. It was something announced, something shared, something that bound the community together. But there was a problem with these weight-driven clocks. The weight fell at an uneven rate. As it descended, the force it exerted changed slightly, which affected the speed of the gears. Clockmakers needed a way to regulate this, to make the gears turn at a steady, predictable pace. The solution they found was called an escapement, and it's one of the most elegant inventions in the history of timekeeping. An escapement is a device that releases the energy of the falling weight in small, controlled increments. It allows one gear tooth to escape at a time, hence the name. The most common early escapement was called the verge and foliate. It consisted of a vertical rod, the verge, with two pallets that alternately caught and released the teeth of a gear. At the top of the verge was a horizontal bar, the foliate, with adjustable weights. As the foliate swung back and forth, it regulated the speed at which the gear could turn. This back and forth motion created the tick-tock sound that we associate with clocks. It's a sound that has become so familiar, so woven into our experience, that we barely notice it. But when these clocks were new, that sound was a wonder. It was the sound of time being divided, of moments being counted, of human ingenuity imposing order on the flow of hours. The escapement transformed timekeeping. It made clocks more accurate, more reliable. It allowed clockmakers to add minute hands, and eventually second hands. It turned the clock from a rough indicator of the hour into a precision instrument. And yet, for all its mechanical complexity, there's something almost organic about the escapement, something that mimics the rhythms of nature. The swing of a pendulum, the beat of a heart, the breathing in and out. In the 17th century, a Dutch scientist named Christian Huygens made a discovery that would revolutionize clockmaking. He realized that a pendulum, a weight suspended from a fixed point and allowed to swing freely, has a property called isochronism. It takes the same amount of time to complete each swing, regardless of the amplitude of the swing. A wide swing and a narrow swing take the same time, as long as the pendulum is the same length. This was a gift to clockmakers. By attaching a pendulum to a clock's escapement, they could regulate the movement of the gears with unprecedented accuracy. Huygens built the first pendulum clock in 1656, and it was accurate to within about 15 seconds per day, a huge improvement over earlier clocks. Soon, pendulum clocks were everywhere, in homes and shops and laboratories, their steady tick-tock marking the seconds with calm precision. There's something deeply soothing about a pendulum clock. The pendulum swings back and forth, a visible embodiment of time's passage. You can watch it, let your eyes follow its movement, let your breathing synchronize with its rhythm. It's hypnotic, calming, a gentle reminder that time moves in cycles, that there's a regularity and order to the world. The length of the pendulum determines the period of its swing. A longer pendulum swings more slowly, a shorter one more quickly. For a pendulum to tick once per second, it needs to be about 1 meter long, roughly 39 inches. This length became a standard, and clocks with 1-second pendulums became known as seconds pendulums. They were the heartbeat of the household, the steady pulse that organized the day. Pendulum clocks also help scientists make precise measurements. Astronomers used them to time the movements of planets and stars. Physicists used them to study gravity and motion. The clock became not just a practical tool, but a scientific instrument, a way of quantifying the world with ever greater accuracy. But pendulum clocks had a limitation. They only worked when stationary. The swinging of a ship or the jolting of a carriage would disrupt the pendulum's motion, making the clock useless for navigation. This was a serious problem, especially for sailors trying to determine their longitude at sea. Longitude, the east-west position on the globe, is difficult to calculate without an accurate clock. You need to know the exact time at a reference point, usually Greenwich in England, and compare it to the local time based on the sun's position. The difference tells you how far east or west you've traveled. In 1714, the British government offered a substantial prize, the Longitude Prize, to anyone who could devise a method of determining longitude at sea with sufficient accuracy. Many tried, including astronomers who proposed using the moon's position as a clock in the sky. But the solution that ultimately worked was a clock, a marine chronometer, built by a self-taught English carpenter named John Harrison. Harrison spent decades perfecting his chronometers. He built 5 of them, each one an improvement on the last. His 4th chronometer, H4, was a large pocket watch, about 5 inches in diameter. It was tested on a voyage to Jamaica in 1761 and performed beautifully, losing only 5 seconds over the entire journey. This was accurate enough to determine longitude to within about 1 nautical mile, a remarkable achievement. Harrison's chronometers didn't use pendulums. Instead, they used a balance wheel, a weighted wheel that oscillates back and forth, driven by a spring. The balance wheel was less affected by motion and changes in temperature than a pendulum, making it ideal for use at sea. Harrison also incorporated many clever innovations to compensate for the effects of temperature and humidity, ensuring that his chronometers kept accurate time in all conditions. The marine chronometer changed the world. It made long-distance sea travel safer and more predictable. Ships could navigate with confidence, knowing their position with unprecedented accuracy. Trade routes expanded, empires grew, and the world became, in a sense, smaller and more connected. And at the heart of this transformation was a clock, a beautifully crafted device that measured time with such precision that it could guide sailors across thousands of miles of open ocean. There's something poetic about the idea that time and space are connected, that by measuring one, you could determine the other. The chronometer made this connection tangible, practical. It showed that time is not just an abstract concept, but a fundamental dimension of reality, something that can be measured, harnessed, used to navigate the world. As clockmaking advanced, craftsmen began to create clocks of astonishing beauty and complexity. These are not just tools, but works of art, objects that combine technical precision with aesthetic grace. In the 18th and 19th centuries, clockmakers in France, England, Switzerland, and Germany competed to build the most elaborate, the most accurate, the most beautiful clocks. Some clocks were astronomical, showing not just the time, but the positions of the sun, moon, and planets, the phases of the moon, the times of sunrise and sunset. These clocks were like miniature auroras, mechanical models of the solar system, all driven by the same clockwork mechanism. They reminded their owners that time is not separate from the cosmos, but intimately connected to it, that our hours and minutes are shaped by the turning of the Earth and the orbits of celestial bodies. Other clocks were musical, chiming melodies on bells or playing tunes on tiny organs. Some had automata, little mechanical figures that moved when the clock struck the hour, a bird that sang, a shepherd who played a flute, a procession of saints or apostles. These clocks were enchanting, delightful, a blend of technology and whimsy. They showed that timekeeping could be not just functional but joyful, something that brought beauty and wonder into daily life. In Japan, a unique form of clockmaking developed during the Edo period, from the 17th to the 19th century. Japanese clocks, called wadoki-ai, were designed to measure temporal hours, a system in which the day and night were each divided into 6 equal parts. Since the length of day and night changes with the seasons, a temporal hour was longer in summer days and shorter in winter days. Wadoki-ai had adjustable mechanisms to accommodate this, making them some of the most ingenious and complex clocks ever built. These Japanese clocks were often works of art, with lacquered cases, intricate metalwork, and beautiful calligraphy. They reflected a different philosophy of time, one that was more attuned to natural rhythms, to the changing seasons, to the balance between light and dark. They remind us that timekeeping is not universal, that different cultures have measured time in different ways according to their needs and values. In the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution brought new materials and manufacturing techniques to clockmaking. Clocks became cheaper and more widely available. The pocket watch became a common possession, a personal timekeeper that you could carry with you wherever you went. For the first time, ordinary people could own a device that told time with reasonable accuracy, that allowed them to coordinate their activities, to catch trains, to arrive at appointments on time. The pocket watch was often a treasured object, passed down through generations. It was kept in a vest pocket, attached to a chain, and consulted throughout the day. There was a ritual to it: pulling out the watch, opening the case, checking the time, winding the mechanism. This ritual created a moment of pause, a brief interruption in the flow of activity, a chance to orient oneself in time. Winding a watch or clock is itself a peaceful activity. You turn the key or crown, feeling the resistance of the spring as it tightens, storing energy that will be released slowly over the next day or week. It's a tactile connection to the mechanism, a reminder that this device is not powered by some distant, invisible source, but by your own hand, by the energy you've imparted to it. The mainspring, the coiled spring that powers a mechanical watch or clock, is a marvel of engineering. It's a long, thin ribbon of steel, coiled tightly and held under tension. As it unwinds, it releases energy gradually, driving the gears and the escapement. The challenge is to make this release as smooth and constant as possible, so that the clock keeps accurate time from the moment it's fully wound until it runs down. Clockmakers developed various devices to achieve this. One is the fusee, a cone-shaped pulley that compensates for the changing force of the mainspring. When a spring is fully wound, it exerts more force, so the chain or cord is wrapped around the narrow part of the fusee, reducing the leverage. As the spring unwinds and its force decreases, the chain moves to the wider part of the fusee, increasing the leverage. The result is a constant force delivered to the gears, and thus a constant rate of timekeeping. The fusee is a beautiful example of mechanical ingenuity, a simple yet elegant solution to a complex problem. It's also a reminder that even the most precise machines are subject to imperfections, and that the art of clockmaking lies in compensating for these imperfections, in coaxing accuracy and reliability from materials that are never quite perfect. In the 20th century, timekeeping underwent another revolution with the invention of the quartz clock. Quartz is a mineral, a form of silicon dioxide, and it has a remarkable property. When you apply an electric current to a quartz crystal, it vibrates at a very precise frequency. Conversely, when you mechanically stress a quartz crystal, it generates a small electric current. This property is called piezoelectricity. Clockmakers realized that they could use a quartz crystal as a timekeeping element, far more accurate than any mechanical escapement. A quartz clock has a small crystal, usually shaped like a tuning fork, that vibrates at 32,768 times per second when powered by a battery. An electronic circuit counts these vibrations and converts them into seconds, minutes, and hours. The result is a clock that's accurate to within a few seconds per month, far better than even the finest mechanical clocks. Quartz clocks are also silent. There's no ticking, no mechanical sound at all, just the quiet hum of electronics, usually inaudible. For some, this silence is a blessing, a relief from the constant tick-tock of mechanical clocks. For others, it's a loss, a disconnection from the tangible, audible presence of time. The quartz revolution made accurate timekeeping cheap and accessible. Quartz watches and clocks are everywhere now, so common that we take them for granted. But there's still something almost magical about the fact that a tiny crystal, vibrating tens of thousands of times per second, can measure time with such precision. Yet, even quartz clocks are not the most accurate timekeepers we've devised. That honor belongs to atomic clocks, which measure time based on the vibrations of atoms. The most common type uses cesium atoms, When cesium atoms are exposed to microwave radiation at a specific frequency, they transition between two energy states. By tuning the microwave frequency until it causes the maximum number of transitions, you can lock onto the natural resonance frequency of the cesium atom, which is extraordinarily stable. The official definition of a second, established in 1967, is based on this. 1 second is the duration of 9,192,631,770 cycles of the radiation corresponding to the transition between two energy levels of the cesium-133 atom. This is a definition of breathtaking precision, a second defined not by the turning of the Earth or the swing of a pendulum, but by the quantum behavior of atoms. Atomic clocks are so accurate that they would lose less than 1 second over millions of years. They are used to define coordinated universal time, the global time standard, and they are essential for technologies like GPS, which relies on precise timing to calculate positions. Yet for all their precision, atomic clocks are also, in a way, deeply peaceful. They measure time at the most fundamental level, at the level of atoms and quantum states, where the universe ticks along with perfect regularity. There's a certain comfort in knowing that beneath all the chaos and unpredictability of daily life, there's a level of reality where time flows with absolute consistency, where every second is exactly the same length, where the universe keeps time with a precision that no mechanical device could ever match. But let's return, for a moment, to the clocks we live with, the clocks we see and hear and touch. Because for all the marvels of atomic precision, the clocks that matter most to us are the ones that mark our days, that wake us in the morning, that remind us of appointments, that chime the hours in our homes. The alarm clock, for instance, is a device that has shaped modern life in profound ways. Before alarm clocks, people relied on roosters, on church bells, on knocker-uppers. People employed a tap on windows to wake workers. The mechanical alarm clock, which became common in the late 19th century, gave individuals control over their waking time. You could set it for whenever you needed a rise, and it would ring, loud and insistent, pulling you from sleep. There's a certain violence to the alarm clock, isn't there? The sudden noise, the jolt into wakefulness. It's the opposite of peaceful, and yet, it's also a tool of autonomy, a way of taking charge of your time, of deciding when your day begins. The alarm clock is a reminder that time is not just something that happens to us, but something we can shape, at least a little, to fit our needs. Some clocks are designed specifically for peace, for gentleness. The Japanese incense clock, for example, measured time by the burning of incense. Different scents were arranged along a path, so that as the incense burned, different fragrances would be released, marking the passage of hours. There was no ticking, no alarm, just the slow progression of scent, a quiet, almost invisible way of marking time. Incense clocks were used in meditation, in tea ceremonies, in quiet contemplation. They remind us that time can be measured not just by sight and sound, but by smell, by the slow transformation of matter, by the gentle fading of one moment into the next. There are also clocks that measure time by the growth of plants, by the opening and closing of flowers. Carl Linnaeus, the Swedish botanist, designed a flower clock in the 18th century, planting flowers that opened and closed at different times of day. By observing which flowers were open, you could estimate the time. It was a living clock, a garden clock, a reminder that time is woven into the rhythms of nature, that every living thing has its own internal schedule. The idea of biological time, of circadian rhythms, is itself a kind of timekeeping. Our bodies have internal clocks, governed by genes and proteins that cycle through roughly 24-hour periods. These clocks regulate our sleep and wakefulness, our hunger and metabolism, our alertness and mood. They are synchronized by external cues, especially light, but they tick along even in the absence of those cues, an internal sense of time that evolved over millions of years. This biological clock is why jet lag feels so disorienting. When you travel across time zones, your internal clock is out of sync with the external world. Your body thinks it's one time, but the sun and the clocks around you say it's another. It takes days for your internal clock to adjust, to reset itself to the new schedule. This adjustment is a reminder that time is not just an external measurement, but something we carry within us, something woven into our cells. The study of circadian rhythms has revealed that almost every cell in your body has its own clock, its own cycle of gene expression that follows a roughly 24-hour pattern. These clocks are coordinated by a master clock in the brain, in a region called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which sits just above the optic nerves and receives direct input from the eyes. This master clock keeps all the other clocks in sync, ensuring that your body functions as a coordinated whole. There's something beautiful about this, the idea that you are, in a sense, a community of clocks, billions of tiny timekeepers all working together, all synchronized to the rhythm of day and night. It's a reminder that time is not separate from life, but fundamental to it. That living is itself a kind of timekeeping, a process that unfolds in rhythms and cycles. As we've moved through history, from sundials to atomic clocks, one thing has remained constant: our need to measure time, to mark its passage, to coordinate our lives with one another and with the world around us. Clocks are tools, yes, but they are also symbols, reminders of our mortality, our finitude, our place in the flow of history. And yet, clocks can also be sources of peace. The steady tick of a grandfather clock in a quiet room, the soft glow of a clock face in the darkness, the ritual of winding, of setting, of checking the time. These are small moments of order, of connection, of presence. They remind us that even as time flows on, carrying us with it, there's a rhythm, a pattern, a regularity that we can hold on to. In a world that often feels too fast, too chaotic, too full of noise and urgency, the clock can be a point of stillness. It doesn't speed up or slow down with our moods. It doesn't panic or rush. It simply ticks along, second by second, marking time with patient indifference. And there's a comfort in that, a reminder that no matter what happens, time continues, steady and reliable, the one constant in a changing world. So as you lie here, listening to these words, let yourself relax into the knowledge that time is on your side. There's no hurry. The clock is ticking, yes, but it's ticking at the same pace it always has, the same pace it always will. You don't need to race against it. You can simply be here, now, in this moment, letting the seconds drift by like leaves on a stream. And so we drift deeper into the quiet world of time, where each mechanism and measurement carries its own gentle story, where precision and poetry meet in the softest possible way. The cesium atom, which we touched upon earlier, vibrates in a manner so steady that scientists have built entire systems of timekeeping around its rhythmic dance. Inside an atomic clock, cesium atoms are heated until they form a vapor, a cloud of individual particles floating in carefully controlled conditions. These atoms are then exposed to microwaves at a very specific frequency, and when that frequency matches exactly the natural vibration of the cesium atoms, they resonate in perfect harmony. This resonance is detected, measured, and used to define the second itself. It is a beautiful example of how nature provides us with constants, reliable patterns we can observe and trust, even in the quietest corners of the quantum world. The second, as we know it today, is defined by exactly 9,192,631,770 oscillations of this cesium transition. That number might seem arbitrary, but it was chosen carefully to match as closely as possible the older definition of the second, which was based on the Earth's rotation. Scientists wanted to preserve continuity with human history while embracing the superior accuracy of atomic physics. The result is a definition that bridges the ancient and the modern, honoring both the sky watchers of millennia past and the laboratory researchers of today. It is a comforting thought that our second, the heartbeat of our schedules and routines, is rooted in something so fundamental and unchanging. Atomic clocks are so precise that they would lose only about 1 second over tens of millions of years. Some of the newest optical atomic clocks, which use different atoms and light frequencies instead of microwaves, are even more accurate, losing less than a second over billions of years. These clocks are so sensitive that they can detect the passage of time at different heights due to gravity's influence, a phenomenon predicted by Einstein's theory of relativity. If you place one optical clock on the floor and another on a table just a few centimeters higher, the clock on the table will tick slightly faster because it experiences slightly less gravitational pull. Time itself flows at different rates depending on where you are, a fact that is both humbling and wondrous. This discovery has profound implications not just for physics, but for our understanding of reality. Time is not a rigid, universal backdrop against which events unfold. It is flexible, influenced by gravity and motion, woven into the fabric of space itself. Yet, even as we uncover these deep truths, the practical act of keeping time remains a source of comfort and order. We set our clocks, we plan our days, we meet each other at agreed-upon moments, and in doing so, we create a shared rhythm that connects us all. The precision of atomic clocks enables technologies like GPS, which relies on satellites equipped with atomic timekeepers to triangulate positions on Earth with remarkable accuracy. Without these clocks, our navigation systems would drift out of alignment within minutes. Let us turn our attention now to the concept of time zones, those invisible lines drawn across the globe to help us coordinate our lives. Before the advent of railroads and telegraphs, each town kept its own local time, determined by the position of the sun. Noon was when the sun reached its highest point in the sky, and this moment varied from place to place. As travel and communication became faster, the lack of a standardized system created confusion. Trains arriving and departing on different local times led to misconnections and even accidents. In the late 19th century, a solution emerged. The world would be divided into time zones, each spanning roughly 15 degrees of longitude, corresponding to 1 hour of the Earth's rotation. The adoption of time zones was gradual and not without resistance. People were accustomed to their local solar time and found the new system artificial. But the benefits soon became clear. Coordinating schedules across distances became simpler, trade and travel more efficient. The prime meridian, passing through Greenwich, England, was chosen as the 0 point, and time zones were measured as offsets from Greenwich Mean Time. This system, with some modifications, remains in use today. It is a testament to humanity's ability to create order and agreement, to find ways of living together harmoniously despite our vast geographic spread. Some countries, in an effort to reflect their unique geography or political considerations, have adopted time zones that differ by half-hour or even 15-minute increments from the standard hour divisions. India, for example, is 5.5 hours ahead of Greenwich Mean Time. Nepal is 5 hours and 45 minutes ahead. These quirks add a layer of individuality to the global timekeeping system, reminding us that time, while universal in its passage, is also deeply human in its measurement and application. Each choice reflects history, culture, and the practical needs of the people who live within those borders. Daylight saving time is another human intervention in the flow of time, a practice that shifts clocks forward by 1 hour during warmer months to extend evening daylight. The idea was first widely implemented during World War I as a way to conserve energy, though its origins can be traced to earlier proposals by figures like Benjamin Franklin, who suggested it somewhat humorously. The practice has been adopted, modified, and sometimes abandoned by various countries over the years. Some people find the transition disruptive, a sudden shift that disturbs sleep and routine. Others appreciate the longer evenings. Regardless of opinion, daylight saving time is a reminder that our relationship with time is not purely passive. We adjust it, negotiate with it, bend it slightly to suit our purposes. The Earth's rotation, which forms the basis of our day, is not perfectly constant. It is gradually slowing down due to tidal forces exerted by the moon. As the moon's gravity pulls on the Earth's oceans, creating tides, it also creates friction that acts as a brake on the planet's spin. This slowdown is very gradual, amounting to only about 1.7 milliseconds per century, but over geological timescales, it is significant. Hundreds of millions of years ago, a day was shorter than it is now. Fossils of ancient corals, which grow in daily and yearly layers, provide evidence of this. By counting the layers, scientists have determined that a year in the distant past contained more days, each one shorter than our current 24 hours. This gradual lengthening of the day means that our clocks, which are based on atomic time and do not slow down, occasionally drift out of sync with the Earth's rotation. To correct this, scientists add a leap second to our official timekeeping every few years. A leap second is a single extra second inserted at the end of June or December, ensuring that atomic time and Earth time remain aligned. It is a small adjustment, barely noticeable in daily life, but it reflects the ongoing conversation between the precise, unchanging rhythms of atoms and the more variable, natural rhythms of our planet. The moon, which causes these tidal effects, is slowly drifting away from the Earth as a result. Each year, the moon recedes by about 3.8 centimeters. This is a consequence of the conservation of angular momentum. As the Earth's rotation slows, the moon must move farther away to balance the system. In the distant future, billions of years from now, the Earth and moon will reach a state called tidal locking, where the Earth's day and the moon's orbital period match, and the same side of the Earth always faces the moon. But this is so far in the future that it exists only in the realm of theoretical astronomy, a gentle reminder of the vast timescales on which celestial mechanics operate. Let us consider now the concept of the calendar, another human invention designed to organize time into manageable units. The calendar we use today, the Gregorian calendar, is a solar calendar based on the Earth's orbit around the Sun. It was introduced in 1582 by Pope Gregory XIII as a reform of the earlier Julian calendar, which had been in use since Roman times. The Julian calendar had a small error. It assumed the year was exactly 365.25 days long, leading to a leap year every 4 years. In reality, the solar year is about 365.2422 days long, a difference of about 11 minutes per year. Over centuries, this discrepancy caused the calendar to drift out of sync with the seasons. The Gregorian reform corrected this by adjusting the leap year rule. In the Gregorian calendar, a year is a leap year if it is divisible by 4, except for years divisible by 100, which are not leap years, unless they are also divisible by 400. This rule is more complex, but it keeps the calendar aligned with the solar year to within 1 day every few thousand years. The transition from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar required skipping several days to realign the calendar with the seasons. Different countries adopted the change at different times, leading to periods when neighboring regions were living in different dates, a curious footnote in the history of timekeeping. Other cultures have developed their own calendars, each reflecting different astronomical observations and cultural priorities. The Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar based on the cycles of the moon, with each month beginning at the sighting of the new crescent moon. Because 12 lunar months total only about 354 days, the Islamic calendar does not align with the solar year, and Islamic holidays shift earlier each year relative to the Gregorian calendar. The Hebrew calendar is lunisolar, incorporating both lunar months and adjustments to keep it aligned with the solar year, ensuring that religious festivals occur in their proper seasons. The Chinese calendar is also lunisolar, with a complex system of intercalary months added periodically to maintain alignment. These diverse calendars are a testament to humanity's creativity and adaptability. Each system reflects the needs and observations of the people who developed it, whether for agricultural planning, religious observance, or social coordination. They remind us that time, while a physical phenomenon, is also a cultural construct shaped by the ways we choose to mark and measure it. There is something deeply comforting in this diversity, in knowing that people across the world and throughout history have looked at the same sky, the same cycles, and found their own meaningful patterns within them. The concept of the week, a cycle of 7 days, is another fascinating element of timekeeping. Unlike the day, month, and year, which are based on astronomical cycles, the week has no direct natural counterpart. Its origins are ancient and somewhat mysterious, with roots in Babylonian astrology and Jewish tradition. The 7-day week was adopted by the Romans and later spread throughout the world with the expansion of Christianity and Islam. Each day of the week is named after celestial bodies or deities associated with them. Sunday for the sun, Monday for the moon, and the other days for planets and gods in various languages. This naming reflects the ancient belief in the influence of celestial bodies on human affairs, a blend of astronomy, mythology, and timekeeping. The 7-day week has a pleasing rhythm, a cycle short enough to be easily remembered, but long enough to structure work and rest. Many cultures have adopted a pattern of working for several days and then resting, with the specific day of rest varying by tradition. This rhythm provides a predictable structure to life, a recurring pattern that helps us organize our activities and find balance. It is a small example of how timekeeping serves not just practical purposes, but also psychological and social ones, giving us a framework within which to live our lives. Let us return to the mechanisms of clocks themselves, to the quiet ingenuity that has allowed us to measure time with ever greater precision. After the development of the pendulum clock and the marine chronometer, clockmakers continued to refine their craft, seeking ways to eliminate sources of error and increase reliability. One challenge was temperature variation, which caused metal parts to expand and contract, affecting the clock's rate. To address this, clockmakers developed compensated pendulums, using combinations of metals with different expansion rates arranged so that their effects canceled out. Bimetallic strips, made of two metals bonded together, would bend as temperature changed, and this bending could be used to adjust the effective length of the pendulum, keeping the clock accurate. Another innovation was the use of jewel bearings. In traditional clocks, the pivots of gears turned in metal holes, and over time, friction and wear would degrade performance. By using hard gemstones like rubies or sapphires as bearings, clockmakers dramatically reduced friction and wear, allowing clocks to run more smoothly and last longer. These jewels were carefully shaped and polished, tiny pieces of precision that contributed to the overall accuracy of the timepiece. The practice of using jeweled bearings became a mark of quality in watchmaking, and even today, mechanical watches often advertise the number of jewels they contain, a nod to this tradition of craftsmanship. The invention of the balance spring, also known as the hairspring, was another major advancement in portable timekeeping. In watches, which are too small and mobile for a pendulum, the balance wheel oscillates back and forth, controlled by a delicate coiled spring. The balance spring was invented independently by Christian Huygens and Robert Hooke in the 17th century, and it revolutionized watchmaking by providing a compact, reliable oscillator. The balance wheel and spring together form a harmonic oscillator, similar in principle to a pendulum, but suited to the small, moving environment of a wristwatch. The craftsmanship required to make these tiny springs, often thinner than a human hair, is extraordinary, a testament to the skill and patience of watchmakers. Mechanical watches, with their intricate assemblies of gears, springs, and levers, are marvels of miniaturization and precision. Each component must be made to exacting tolerances and assembled with care. The ticking of a mechanical watch is the sound of the escapement releasing the gear train in tiny, controlled increments, each tick representing a fraction of a second. Winding a mechanical watch, feeling the resistance of the mainspring as it coils tighter, is a tactile connection to the energy that will power the watch through the day. There is something meditative about this ritual, a moment of attention and care for a small, complex object that serves us faithfully. In the mid-20th century, the development of the quartz watch brought a new level of accuracy and affordability to personal timekeeping. Quartz watches use a small piece of quartz crystal that vibrates at a precise frequency when an electric current is applied. This vibration is much faster and more stable than the oscillations of a balance wheel or pendulum, typically 32,768 times per second, a frequency chosen because it is a power of 2 and can be easily divided down to 1 pulse per second using digital circuits. The result is a watch that is accurate to within a few seconds per month, far better than most mechanical watches, and at a fraction of the cost. The quartz revolution transformed the watch industry, making accurate timekeeping accessible to everyone. It also led to the development of digital watches, which display time as numbers rather than through the movement of hands. Digital displays, often using liquid crystal or LED technology, offered new possibilities for functionality, including alarms, timers, and even early computing features. Yet despite the dominance of quartz and digital technology, mechanical watches have never disappeared. They are cherished for their craftsmanship, their connection to tradition, and the simple pleasure of owning something made with such care. The coexistence of mechanical and quartz watches is a reminder that technology does not always replace what came before. Sometimes, it simply adds new options, new ways of experiencing the world. Atomic clocks, as we have discussed, represent the pinnacle of timekeeping accuracy, but they are far too large and complex for everyday use. Instead, they serve as primary standards, maintained by national laboratories around the world. These laboratories compare their atomic clocks and contribute to the calculation of International Atomic Time, a weighted average of hundreds of atomic clocks that serves as the global time standard. From this standard, Coordinated Universal Time is derived, incorporating leap seconds to keep atomic time aligned with the Earth's rotation. This global network of timekeeping is a quiet, collaborative effort, a shared commitment to maintaining a common reference for time that benefits everyone. The Global Positioning System, or GPS, relies on this precise timekeeping to function. GPS satellites orbit the Earth, each carrying multiple atomic clocks. These satellites continuously broadcast their position and the exact time according to their onboard clocks. A GPS receiver on the ground picks up signals from multiple satellites and calculates its position by measuring the time it takes for each signal to arrive. Because radio signals travel at the speed of light, even a tiny error in timekeeping would result in a large error in position. An error of just 1 microsecond would translate to a position error of about 300 meters. Thanks to atomic clocks, GPS can determine your position to within a few meters, a remarkable feat that we often take for granted. The satellites themselves experience time differently than we do on the ground, due to both their speed and their altitude. Special relativity tells us that moving clocks tick more slowly, and because the satellites are moving at high speed relative to the Earth's surface, their clocks should run slower. However, general relativity tells us that clocks in weaker gravitational fields tick faster, and because the satellites are farther from the Earth's center, their clocks should run faster. These two effects work in opposite directions, but the gravitational effect is larger, so the satellite clocks actually run slightly faster than clocks on the ground, gaining about 38 microseconds per day. GPS systems must account for these relativistic effects to maintain accuracy, a beautiful example of how Einstein's theories, once abstract and theoretical, have become essential to everyday technology. Let us consider the idea of time itself, beyond the clocks and calendars we use to measure it. Time is one of the most fundamental aspects of our experience, yet remains deeply mysterious. We perceive time as flowing from past to future, a one-way progression that we cannot reverse. This directionality, often called the arrow of time, is linked to the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy, or disorder, tends to increase in isolated systems. The universe as a whole is moving from a state of low entropy to high entropy, from order to disorder, and this progression gives time its direction. We remember the past, but not the future. We see causes precede effects, and we age and change in ways that cannot be undone, all because of this thermodynamic arrow. Yet the fundamental laws of physics, at the level of individual particles, are largely time-symmetric. The equations that describe how particles move and interact work just as well if time is reversed. A film of billiard balls colliding, played backward, would still obey the laws of physics. The asymmetry we observe in everyday life emerges from the statistical behavior of vast numbers of particles, not from the underlying laws themselves. This is a profound and somewhat unsettling realization. The flow of time, which feels so immediate and real, is in some sense an emergent property, a consequence of the universe's initial conditions and the way complexity builds from simplicity. Some physicists and philosophers have questioned whether time truly flows at all, or whether our perception of flow is an illusion created by the way our brains process memories and experiences. According to this view, often called the block universe, all moments in time exist equally, and the passage of time is simply the way we, as conscious beings embedded in time, experience the universe. This is a difficult idea to grasp, and it challenges our intuitive sense of reality. Yet it is consistent with relativity, which treats time as a dimension similar to space, and suggests that past, present, and future are all part of a single, unchanging four-dimensional structure. These are deep waters, questions that lie at the boundary of physics and philosophy, and they remind us of how much we still have to learn about the nature of time. For our purposes, though, we can set aside these abstract questions and simply appreciate the practical and poetic aspects of timekeeping. Time, however we understand it, is what we measure with our clocks, what we organize our lives around, what connects us to the rhythms of the earth and the cosmos. It is a gift, a framework that allows us to plan, to remember, to hope, to coordinate with others, and to find meaning in the sequence of events that make up our lives. The history of timekeeping is also a history of human curiosity and ingenuity. From the earliest sundials to the most advanced optical atomic clocks, each innovation represents a step forward in our understanding of the world and our ability to navigate it. These tools have been developed not out of idle curiosity alone, but out of practical need. The need to plant crops at the right time, to navigate the seas, to coordinate trains and telegraphs, to synchronize global communications. Yet there is also beauty in these devices, in the elegance of their design and the precision of their operation. A well-made clock is a work of art as much as a scientific instrument, a harmonious blend of form and function. In our modern world, we are surrounded by clocks. They're on our walls, our wrists, our phones, our computers. We glance at them constantly, using them to structure our days, to meet deadlines, to catch trains, to remember appointments. This ubiquity can make us take time for granted, treating it as a mere backdrop to our activities. But when we pause and consider the long history and deep science behind these simple displays of hours and minutes, we can find a new appreciation for them. Each tick of a clock is a tiny marvel, a moment measured and marked, a connection to the vast, intricate systems that govern our universe. There is something calming about the regularity of a clock, the way it divides time into equal, predictable units. In a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, the steady ticking of a clock provides a sense of order and continuity. It reminds us that time continues, that each moment follows the last in an unbroken chain, that the future will arrive just as surely as the past has departed. This regularity can be a source of comfort, a reminder that there is structure and pattern in the world, even when our personal experiences feel turbulent or unpredictable. Clocks also serve as a form of meditation, a focal point for attention. Watching the second hand sweep around the dial, or listening to the rhythmic ticking of a mechanical clock, can be a way to anchor oneself in the present moment. It is a practice of mindfulness, a simple act of observing without judgment, of being present with the passage of time. In this way, clocks are not just tools for measuring time, but tools for experiencing it, for becoming more aware of the precious, fleeting nature of each moment. The craftsmanship involved in making traditional clocks and watches is another source of wonder. A skilled watchmaker spends years learning their trade, mastering the techniques required to shape tiny components, to assemble them with precision, to adjust and regulate the finished timepiece. Each watch is a labor of love, a testament to patience and dedication. In an age of mass production and disposable goods, there is something deeply satisfying about owning an object made with such care, something that can last for generations if properly maintained. It is a connection to the past, to the long tradition of artisans who have devoted their lives to the pursuit of excellence. Even quartz and digital watches, though produced in large quantities, represent remarkable achievements of engineering and manufacturing. The ability to produce millions of accurate, reliable timepieces at low cost has democratized timekeeping, ensuring that everyone, regardless of wealth, can have access to precise time. This is a significant social achievement, one that has contributed to the coordination and efficiency of modern life. It is easy to overlook the importance of such everyday technologies, but they form the foundation of our interconnected world. Let us think about the role of time in our daily lives, the ways it shapes our routines and rhythms. We wake to alarms. We schedule our days in blocks of hours and minutes. We meet others at appointed times. We mark the passage of weeks and months with calendars. This structuring of time is both liberating and constraining. It allows us to accomplish more, to coordinate with others, to plan for the future. But it can also feel restrictive, as if we are always racing against the clock, never quite able to catch up. Finding balance in our relationship with time is one of the ongoing challenges of modern life. In many traditional societies, time was experienced more fluidly, governed by natural cycles and communal rhythms rather than by the clock. Work was done when it needed to be done, rest taken when the body required it, social gatherings happening when people were available. The introduction of clock time, especially with the Industrial Revolution, brought a new kind of discipline, a need to synchronize activities and maximize efficiency. This shift has had profound effects on how we live, both positive and negative. It has enabled the complex coordination required by modern economies and technologies, but it has also created pressures and stresses that were less common in earlier times. There is a growing movement today toward reclaiming a more mindful relationship with time, towards slowing down and being more present in each moment. This movement recognizes that while clocks and schedules are useful tools, they should serve us, not dominate us. Practices like meditation, slow living, and digital detoxing are ways people are finding to step back from the relentless pace of modern life and reconnect with a more natural, human-centered experience of time. These practices do not reject timekeeping, but rather seek to use it more wisely, to create space for rest, reflection, and genuine connection. The concept of clock time versus event time captures this distinction. Clock time is measured by the ticking of a clock, divided into uniform units that pass at a constant rate. Event time is measured by the occurrence of meaningful experiences, which may feel longer or shorter depending on their intensity and significance. A boring hour can feel endless, while an hour spent in joyful activity can seem to fly by. This subjective experience of time is just as real as the objective measurement provided by clocks, and honoring both is key to a balanced life. Children, who have not yet been fully socialized in a clock time, often live more in event time. They are absorbed in play, in exploration, in the immediate experience of the world around them. As we grow older, we become more aware of time passing, more conscious of deadlines and schedules. This shift is necessary for functioning in society, but it can also lead to a sense of loss, a nostalgia for the timeless quality of childhood. Perhaps one of the gifts of understanding timekeeping deeply is that it allows us to appreciate both perspectives, to use clocks when they are helpful and to set them aside when they are not. The development of time zones and global timekeeping has also created interesting phenomena, such as the International Date Line, an imaginary line in the Pacific Ocean where the date changes by one day. If you cross the date line traveling west, you skip ahead a day. Traveling east, you go back a day. This line is not perfectly straight, but zigzags to avoid dividing countries and island groups. It is a practical solution to the problem of keeping dates consistent as you travel around the globe, but it also highlights the constructed nature of our timekeeping systems. The date, like the time zone, is a human convention, a way of organizing our experience that is useful, but ultimately arbitrary. Leap years, as we discussed earlier, are another example of how we adjust our calendars to keep them aligned with astronomical reality. The extra day, added every 4 years, with exceptions for century years, ensures that our calendar stays in sync with the seasons. Without leap years, the calendar would gradually drift, and eventually, summer would occur in what we now call winter months. This adjustment is a small but important detail, a reminder that timekeeping requires ongoing attention and refinement. The history of calendar reform is filled with such adjustments. The Julian calendar, with its simple leap year rule, served well for over a millennium, but its small error eventually became noticeable. The Gregorian reform corrected this, but even the Gregorian calendar is not perfect. It will accumulate an error of about one day every 3,000 years. Future generations may need to make further adjustments, continuing the long tradition of refining our tools to match the realities of the cosmos. This ongoing process is a testament to the fact that timekeeping is not a finished project, but a living practice, evolving as our knowledge and needs change. Sundials, those ancient timekeepers, continue to be made and appreciated today, not as practical devices, but as objects of beauty and historical interest. A well-designed sundial in a garden can be a focal point, a reminder of the sun's journey across the sky and the passage of the hours. Reading a sundial requires a moment of attention, a pause to observe the shadow and calculate the time. This slower, more deliberate interaction with time contrasts sharply with the instant readability of digital clocks. And for some, it is a welcome change of pace. Water clocks, too, have found new life in artistic and educational contexts. Modern interpretations of water clocks can be found in museums and public spaces, where they serve as demonstrations of ancient technology and as meditative installations. Watching water flow, drip by drip, is a soothing experience, a visual representation of time's passage that is both simple and profound. These devices remind us that timekeeping has always been as much about marking and honoring time as about measuring it precisely. Hourglasses, with their flowing sand, remain popular as timers and decorative objects. The simplicity of an hourglass is part of its appeal. Turn it over, and the sand begins to flow, marking a fixed interval of time with no need for winding, batteries, or calibration. The sight of sand trickling through the narrow waist of the glass is mesmerizing, a gentle reminder that time is always moving, always slipping away, grain by grain. Hourglasses are often used in contexts where a rough measure of time is sufficient, such as timing a game, a meditation session, or the brewing of tea. They offer a tangible, visible connection to the passage of time, something that digital displays, for all their precision, cannot quite replicate. The sound of a clock is another dimension of timekeeping that deserves attention. The ticking of a mechanical clock, the chime of a grandfather clock marking the hours, the gentle hum of an electric clock, all of these sounds become part of the ambient soundscape of our lives. For some, the ticking of a clock is comforting, a steady heartbeat in the background. For others, it can be distracting or even anxiety-inducing, a constant reminder of time's passage. Clock chimes, which announce the hour with a melody or a series of strikes, have a long tradition. They serve a practical purpose, allowing people to know the time without looking at a clock, but they also add a ceremonial quality to the passage of hours, marking each one as a small event. The Westminster Quarters, a melody commonly used in chiming clocks, is one of the most recognizable clock chimes in the world. It is played on the bells of Big Ben in London, and its 4 notes, repeated in variations, have become synonymous with the passage of time in British culture. Hearing this chime, whether from a clock in your home or from a distant bell tower, can evoke a sense of tradition and continuity, a connection to the countless people who have heard the same melody over the years. Cuckoo clocks, with their whimsical mechanical birds that emerge to mark the hour, are another beloved type of timekeeper. Originating in the Black Forest region of Germany in the 18th century, cuckoo clocks combine time-keeping with entertainment and artistry. The cuckoo's call, produced by small bellows and pipes, is a charming and distinctive sound. These clocks are often elaborately decorated with carved wooden scenes of forest life, adding a decorative element to their functional purpose. A cuckoo clock is not just a timekeeper, but a piece of folk art, a celebration of craftsmanship and regional culture. The development of electric clocks in the early 20th century brought new possibilities for timekeeping. Electric clocks use the alternating current of the power grid as their time base, which in many regions is carefully regulated to maintain a frequency of 50 or 60 hertz. This frequency is stable enough that electric clocks can keep accurate time without the need for a mechanical oscillator. Early electric clocks used synchronous motors that rotated in step with the AC frequency, driving the clock's hands. These clocks were simple, reliable, and inexpensive, and they became widely used in homes and businesses. They represented a shift away from the mechanical complexity of spring-driven clocks toward a new kind of simplicity, one based on electrical engineering rather than mechanical craftsmanship. The advent of radio-controlled clocks in the late 20th century brought yet another level of convenience and accuracy to timekeeping. These clocks receive time signals broadcast by national standards laboratories, such as the signal from WWVEB in the United States or DCF-77 in Germany. The signal, transmitted on a low frequency that can travel long distances, encodes the current time based on atomic clocks maintained by the laboratory. A radio-controlled clock decodes this signal and automatically adjusts itself to the correct time, even accounting for daylight-saving time changes. For the user, this means never having to set the clock, never worrying about it drifting out of sync. It is a seamless integration of advanced technology into everyday life, a quiet marvel that most people take for granted. Smartwatches and smartphones have further transformed our relationship with timekeeping. These devices not only display the time, but also serve as calendars, alarms, timers, fitness trackers, and communication tools. They synchronize with network time servers, ensuring that the time they display is always accurate. The time on your smartphone is derived through a chain of connections from the atomic clocks that define global time standards. In this way, even the most casual glance at your phone to check the time is a connection to the cutting edge of timekeeping science, a link to the cesium atoms oscillating in laboratories around the world. Yet despite all these technological advances, the fundamental human experience of time remains unchanged. We still feel the passage of moments, the rhythm of days and nights, the cycle of seasons. We still age, we still remember the past, and anticipate the future. We still seek to make the most of the time we have. Timekeeping technology serves us by making this experience more manageable, more predictable, more connected to others. But it cannot change the essential nature of time itself, the way it flows through our lives, shaping our experiences and our identities. There's a certain poetry in the way timekeeping connects the very small and the very large, the quantum vibrations of atoms, and the vast rotations of planets and stars. A clock on your wrist is a meeting point of these scales, a device that translates the fundamental constants of nature into something you can read at a glance. This connection is humbling and awe-inspiring, a reminder that we are part of a universe governed by elegant, mathematical laws that we can understand and harness to improve our lives. As we continue to explore the world of timekeeping, we find endless layers of detail and wonder. Each mechanism, each innovation, each cultural practice related to time has its own story, its own logic, its own beauty. Timekeeping is not just a technical subject, but a deeply human one, touching on our need for order, our curiosity about the cosmos, our desire to connect with others, and our quest to understand the nature of existence itself. The precision of modern timekeeping has enabled scientific discoveries that would have been impossible in earlier eras. Experiments in particle physics, for example, often require measurements of events that occur over incredibly short timescales, nanoseconds, or even picoseconds. Atomic clocks and electronic timing systems allow scientists to observe and analyze these fleeting phenomena, revealing the behavior of subatomic particles and the fundamental forces of nature. In astronomy, precise timekeeping allows us to detect exoplanets by measuring the tiny, periodic dimming of a star as a planet passes in front of it, or to observe pulsars, rapidly spinning neutron stars whose pulses arrive with clockwork regularity. Pulsars, in fact, are sometimes called nature's clocks. These remnants of massive stars emit beams of radiation that sweep across space like a lighthouse beam, and as the pulsar rotates, we detect a pulse each time the beam points toward Earth. The rotation periods of pulsars are extremely stable, rivaling the precision of atomic clocks. Some pulsars, known as millisecond pulsars, spin hundreds of times per second, and their pulses arrive with such regularity that they can be used as a kind of cosmic timekeeping standard. Astronomers have proposed using an array of pulsars scattered across the galaxy as a pulsar timing array, a network that could detect gravitational waves and serve as a galactic scale clock. This idea beautifully illustrates how timekeeping extends beyond our planet, into the depths of space, connecting us to the rhythms of the universe itself. The journey through time continues, soft and steady, as we drift deeper into the quieter corners of how humanity has learned to mark and measure the passing moments. There is something profoundly calming about knowing that beneath all the complexity of modern life, time itself flows at its own pace, indifferent to our rushing, always available for us to notice, to honor, to rest within. Let us turn now to the gentle art of clock repair and maintenance, a practice that has existed for as long as mechanical clocks themselves. Clock repairers, known as horologists, work in a world of tiny gears and delicate springs, where patience is not just a virtue, but a necessity. They sit at benches with magnifying glasses, tweezers, and oil so fine it comes in bottles smaller than your thumb. The work requires stillness of hand and quietness of mind. Each gear must be cleaned, each pivot polished, each spring tested for tension. There is no hurrying this work. A clock that has kept time for a century deserves the same careful attention it received when it was new. The horologist listens to the tick, feeling for irregularities, sensing when something is not quite right. It is a meditation, this listening. The rhythm of the escapement becomes a kind of breathing, and in that space between ticks, the repairer finds a focus that is almost sacred. And within the world of horology, there exists a particular appreciation for what are called complication watches. These are timepieces that do more than simply tell the hour and minute. They track the phases of the moon, the day of the week, the month, even the year and the leap year cycle. Some display a tiny rotating sky, showing which constellations are overhead at any given moment. Others include perpetual calendars that account for the irregular lengths of months and the leap year without needing adjustment for decades or even centuries. These complications are not necessary for daily life, of course, but they represent something beautiful. The human desire to capture as much of time's richness as possible in a single, wearable object. To glance at your wrist and see not just the time, but the moon's current phase, the turning of the seasons, the slow wheel of the stars. This is to carry a little piece of the cosmos with you. And there is comfort in that, a reminder that we are part of something much larger and more enduring than our individual worries. The moon phase complication, in particular, has a gentle charm. A small window in the watch face reveals a disc painted with two moons, rotating slowly beneath. As the days pass, the window shows the waxing and waning of the lunar cycle. It takes 29.5 days for the moon to complete its phases, and the mechanism inside the watch is geared to match this rhythm almost perfectly. Over many years, it may drift slightly out of sync, but quality moon phase watches can run accurately for more than a century before needing adjustment. Wearing such a watch connects you to the same cycles that guided ancient travelers, that determined planting seasons, that inspired poets and artists across millennia. The moon's glow, rendered in miniature on your wrist, becomes a small companion, a reminder to look up at the night sky, to notice the changing light. There's also something deeply soothing about the concept of watch winding. In the age of automatic and quartz watches, many people have never experienced the daily ritual of winding a mechanical timepiece. But for those who own manual wind watches, this small act becomes a moment of connection. Each morning, or each evening, you take the watch in your hand, feel its weight, and gently turn the crown. You can feel the mainspring tightening inside, storing the energy that will power the watch through the coming day. It takes perhaps 20 or 30 turns, no more. The action is smooth, meditative. You are participating directly in the watch's operation, giving it the energy it needs, much as you might water a plant or feed a pet. This daily ritual creates a bond between wearer and timepiece. The watch becomes more than an object. It becomes a partner in your daily rhythm, something that depends on you as you depend on it. And in the realm of very large timekeeping, there are tower clocks that have marked the hours for entire communities for hundreds of years. These grand mechanisms, housed in church steeples and civic buildings, are often large enough that you could walk inside them. Their gears may be the size of wagon wheels, their pendulums as long as a person is tall. The weights that drive them can weigh hundreds of pounds, descending slowly through the tower over the course of a week before needing to be wound back up. In earlier times, this winding was done by hand, a task that required strength and care, often performed by a dedicated clock keeper who climbed the tower stairs several times a week. The sound of these great clocks, their bells ringing out the hours, becomes part of the identity of a place. People set their lives by those bells, meeting at noon, finishing work at 5, gathering for evening services at 6. The clock does not just measure time. It creates a shared temporal experience, a communal heartbeat. Big Ben, perhaps the most famous tower clock in the world, has been keeping time over London since 1859. The name actually refers to the Great Bell, which weighs more than 13 tons, though it has come to represent the entire clock tower. The mechanism inside is a masterpiece of Victorian engineering, designed to be both accurate and robust. The pendulum is over 13 feet long and weighs about 660 pounds. It swings once every 2 seconds, and this slow, heavy rhythm has continued, with only brief interruptions for maintenance and wartime precautions, for more than a century and a half. The clock's accuracy is fine-tuned by adding or removing old penny coins on the pendulum. Each penny changes the rate by about 2/5 of a second per day. It is a charmingly simple solution to a complex problem, and it works beautifully. The sound of Big Ben's chimes, broadcast around the world, has become a symbol of stability and continuity, a reminder that some things endure even as the world changes rapidly around them. In contrast to these grand public clocks, there are also the smallest of timepieces, delicate and intricate beyond imagining. Some watchmakers have created mechanical watches so tiny they could fit on the tip of your finger. These are not functional timepieces in any practical sense, but rather demonstrations of skill, patience, and the limits of miniaturization. Each component must be made by hand under a microscope, using tools finer than human hairs. A gear might have teeth measured in fractions of a millimeter. The balance wheel might oscillate invisibly fast. These miniature watches represent hundreds of hours of painstaking work, and they exist primarily as art objects, as proof of what human hands and minds can achieve when focused on a single, seemingly impossible goal. There is something peaceful in knowing that such dedication exists in the world, that someone would spend months creating a watch the size of a grain of rice simply because it can be done, simply because beauty and precision matter. The materials used in watchmaking also carry their own quiet stories. For centuries, rubies have been used as bearings in mechanical watches. These are synthetic rubies, grown in laboratories, but they are chemically identical to natural ones. Rubies are chosen because they are extremely hard and smooth, creating very low friction points where the metal pivots of gears can spin freely. A quality mechanical watch might contain 15, 17, or even more jewel bearings. The phrase 17 jewels on a watch dial is not mere decoration. It indicates the level of refinement in the movement. These tiny rubies, invisible to the wearer, work silently inside the watch, reducing wear, increasing accuracy, allowing the mechanism to run smoothly for decades. There is something almost magical about the idea that gemstones are quietly at work inside your watch, helping time flow more accurately. Sapphire crystal, another form of corundum like ruby, is now commonly used for watch faces. It is second only to diamond in hardness, which means it resists scratching remarkably well. A watch with a sapphire crystal can be worn daily for years and still maintain a clear, unmarred view of the dial beneath. The material is grown in laboratories, then cut and polished to fit each watch model. Some sapphire crystals are treated to reduce reflections, making the watch face easier to read in bright light. This anti-reflective coating is applied in incredibly thin layers, manipulating the way light waves interact with the surface. The technology is similar to that used in camera lenses and eyeglasses. The result is a watch that not only keeps time accurately, but also presents that information as clearly as possible, with minimal visual interference. Clarity, both literal and metaphorical, is one of the great gifts of good timekeeping, and there are watches designed specifically for particular environments, each adaptation a response to the challenges of measuring time in extreme conditions. Dive watches, for instance, are built to function underwater, sometimes at depths of several hundred meters. They have thick cases, screw-down crowns, and gaskets that keep water out. The bezels rotate in only one direction, a safety feature that prevents a diver from accidentally overestimating how much air remains. The markers and hands are coated with luminous material, so they can be read in the darkness of deep water. These watches are tested rigorously, placed in pressure chambers that simulate the crushing force of the ocean depths. Yet despite their ruggedness, many dive watches are also beautiful, with clean dials and elegant proportions. They embody a pleasing paradox, tools built for survival that are also objects of aesthetic appreciation. You can wear one in perfect safety on dry land, and it will serve you faithfully, but knowing it could accompany you into the depths adds a quiet confidence to its presence on your wrist. Pilot watches, too, have their own distinctive character. They tend to have large, highly legible dials with clear numerals and high-contrast hands. Many feature additional functions useful in aviation: chronographs for timing, slide rule bezels for calculations, multiple time zones for tracking position during long flights. The history of pilot watches is intertwined with the history of flight itself. Early aviators needed reliable timekeeping for navigation, especially before the advent of GPS. A few minutes error in time could translate to being miles off course. So watchmakers worked closely with pilots to create instruments that could withstand vibration, temperature changes, and the magnetic fields generated by aircraft instruments. The result was a category of watches that are both highly functional and deeply connected to the romance of flight, to the idea of soaring above the clouds, navigating by stars and chronometer, trusting in precision to bring you safely home. Then there are watches made for space, the most extreme environment humans have yet reached. The Omega Speedmaster, famously worn during the Apollo moon landings, was selected by NASA after rigorous testing. It had to function in the vacuum of space, withstand extreme temperatures, survive high G-forces during launch, and remain accurate despite all these stresses. The Speedmaster succeeded, and it became the first watch worn on the moon in 1969. Astronauts still wear mechanical watches as backup timekeeping devices, even though spacecraft have multiple electronic systems. There is a reassuring simplicity to a mechanical watch. It needs no batteries, no electronics, nothing that can be disrupted by radiation or electromagnetic interference. It is a self-contained system, a small piece of Earth's ingenuity carried into the cosmos. And when you look at a Speedmaster today, you are looking at a design that has been tested in the most unforgiving environment imaginable and proven itself worthy. Let us turn now to the concept of time standards and how they have evolved to meet the needs of an interconnected world. Before the modern era, each city or region kept its own local time, based on the position of the sun. Noon was when the sun reached its highest point in the sky, and this moment occurred at slightly different times depending on your longitude. This system worked well enough when travel was slow and communication even slower. But with the advent of railroads and telegraphs in the 19th century, the lack of standardized time became a serious problem. Train schedules were nearly impossible to coordinate when each station operated on its own local time. Collisions and confusion were common. The solution was the creation of time zones, regions within which everyone would agree to use the same time, even though the sun's position might vary slightly across the zone. The architect of this system, at least in North America, was Sir Sanford Fleming, a Scottish-Canadian engineer. In 1879, after personally experiencing the frustration of a missed train due to a confusing timetable, he proposed dividing the world into 24 time zones, each covering 15 degrees of longitude, corresponding to 1 hour of Earth's rotation. His idea was revolutionary and met with resistance at first. People were attached to their local times, to the idea that noon should be when the sun was highest. But the practical benefits were undeniable. By 1883, railroads in North America had adopted the system, and gradually the rest of the world followed. The International Meridian Conference of 1884 established the prime meridian at Greenwich, and from that line, time zones were measured eastward and westward. It was a profound shift, a move from natural solar-based time to a more abstract, globally coordinated system. Yet it allowed the world to function as a connected whole, and we have lived within this framework ever since. Time zones create some interesting and peaceful quirks. There are places where you can stand with 1 foot in one day and 1 foot in another, straddling the international date line in the Pacific Ocean. There are countries that use half-hour or even quarter-hour offsets from standard time zones, creating their own unique temporal identities. Nepal, for instance, is 5 hours and 45 minutes ahead of UTC, a choice that centers the country's time on its own capital rather than conforming to a neighboring zone. India uses a single time zone for the entire country, despite spanning a significant longitude, which means sunrise and sunset times vary considerably from east to west, but everyone shares the same clock time. These choices reflect cultural values, political decisions, and practical considerations, all woven into the fabric of how we measure our days. Daylight saving time is another temporal adjustment, one that has inspired much debate. The idea is to shift clocks forward by 1 hour during the warmer months, extending evening daylight and theoretically saving energy. The practice was first widely implemented during World War I as a fuel-saving measure, and it has been adopted abandoned, and readopted by various countries over the decades. Some people appreciate the longer evenings, the extra hour of sunlight after work. Others find the transition disruptive, particularly the spring shift when an hour of sleep is lost. Studies on the effects of daylight saving time show mixed results. Small energy savings in some cases, but also temporary increases in accidents and health issues immediately after the time change. Regardless of its merits, the practice is a reminder that our relationship with time is flexible, that we can collectively agree to shift our clocks and, in doing so, shift our experience of the day. It is a strange and very human thing to do, to tinker with time itself in pursuit of convenience or efficiency. The idea of a second, that fundamental unit of time, has been redefined several times as our ability to measure has improved. Originally, a second was defined as a fraction of a day, 1/60th of a 60th of a 24th, dividing the day into 86,400 equal parts. But Earth's rotation is not perfectly constant. It slows very gradually due to tidal friction, and it experiences tiny irregularities due to earthquakes, weather patterns, and the movement of mass within the planet. So in 1967, the second was redefined based not on Earth's rotation, but on the vibrations of a cesium atom. 1 second is now the duration of 9,192,631,770 oscillations of the radiation corresponding to the transition between two energy levels of the cesium-133 atom. This definition is extraordinarily precise and, unlike Earth's rotation, does not change. It anchors our timekeeping to the fundamental constants of physics, to the behavior of atoms, which are the same everywhere in the universe. It is a beautiful convergence. Our everyday experience of seconds and minutes and hours, rooted now in the quantum realm, in the smallest scales of reality. And yet, because we still want our clocks to reflect the Earth's actual rotation, we occasionally add leap seconds to our official timekeeping. When the difference between atomic time and Earth's rotation accumulates to about 0.9 seconds, a leap second is inserted, usually at the end of June or December. Clocks around the world pause for 1 extra second, reading 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 60 seconds before ticking over to midnight of the new day. This adjustment keeps our atomic clocks in sync with the planet's rotation, ensuring that noon remains roughly when the sun is highest. Leap seconds are announced months in advance by the International Earth Rotation and Reference System Service, a group that monitors the planet's spin with exquisite precision. The need for leap seconds is a reminder that we live in a dynamic system, that Earth is not a perfect clock, and that our timekeeping must accommodate both the regularity of atoms and the irregularity of our spinning world. There is something quietly poetic about the fact that timekeeping, at its most advanced, requires us to reconcile the very large and the very small, the rotation of a planet and the vibration of an atom. These two scales of reality, so vastly different, must be brought into harmony for our clocks to serve us well. And they are, through the patient work of scientists and engineers who monitor, adjust, and maintain the systems that keep the world synchronized. This work happens mostly out of sight, in laboratories and observatories, but it touches every part of modern life. Every time you check your phone, send a message, navigate with GPS, or catch a train, you are relying on this intricate, invisible infrastructure of timekeeping. It is a gift, freely given, that we rarely pause to appreciate. Let us consider also the aesthetic dimension of clocks, the way they have been designed, not just to function, but to please the eye and enrich the spaces they inhabit. From the earliest mechanical clocks, there's been an impulse to make them beautiful. Medieval tower clocks were often adorned with astronomical dials, painted figures, and elaborate casings. Clockmakers were artists as well as engineers, and their creations were displayed prominently, celebrated as marvels. This tradition continued through the centuries. Baroque clocks featured gilt bronze, intricate carvings, and enamel work. Rococo clocks were playful and ornate, with flowing curves and delicate details. Neoclassical clocks emphasized symmetry and restraint, often incorporating marble and clean lines. Each era expressed its aesthetic values through the design of its timepieces. In the 20th century, clock design embraced modernism, with its emphasis on function and simplicity. The German Bauhaus movement produced clocks with unadorned faces, clear numerals, and geometric forms. These designs were democratic in spirit, intended to be affordable and accessible, bringing good design into everyday life. The influence of Bauhaus can still be seen in many contemporary clocks, which favor legibility and simplicity over decoration. There's a calmness to these designs, a sense that the clock is not demanding your attention, but simply offering information when you need it. The face is open, the hands are distinct, and nothing is superfluous. This restraint is its own form of beauty, a quietness that complements rather than dominates a room. Then there are novelty clocks, whimsical and inventive, designed to surprise and delight. Clocks shaped like animals, clocks with moving figures, clocks that play music or project images. These are not necessarily the most accurate or sophisticated timepieces, but they bring joy, and that is valuable in itself. A clock that makes you smile when you glance at it, that adds a touch of playfulness to your day, serves a purpose beyond mere timekeeping. It reminds you that time does not have to be a stern taskmaster, that it can be friendly, even fun. Children, in particular, often form their first relationships with time through such clocks, learning to read the hours with the help of cheerful designs and bright colors. And there are clocks designed for silence, for spaces where even the tick of a traditional clock would be intrusive. Libraries, bedrooms, meditation spaces, these environments benefit from clocks that move without sound. Quartz movements, with their electronic precision, can be entirely silent, the second hand gliding smoothly or stepping so quietly that you cannot hear it. Some people find the tick of a mechanical clock soothing, a kind of auditory heartbeat that fills the silence. Others find it distracting, a constant reminder of time's passage when they would rather forget it for a while. The availability of silent clocks is a small but meaningful accommodation, a recognition that people have different needs and preferences when it comes to how they experience time in their personal spaces. There is also a long tradition of astronomical clocks, complex devices that display not just the time, but also the movements of celestial bodies. The Prague astronomical clock, installed in 1410 and still operating today, is one of the most famous. It shows the position of the sun and moon in the sky, the current zodiac sign, the phase of the moon, and even a calendar dial with saints' days. Every hour, a procession of mechanical figures appears, including the 12 apostles, and the clock chimes. Crowds gather to watch this performance, a tradition that has continued for more than 600 years. The clock is both a scientific instrument and a work of art, a testament to medieval ingenuity and craftsmanship. It reminds us that the desire to understand and represent the cosmos is ancient, that humans have always looked up at the sky and sought to make sense of the patterns they saw there. Another remarkable astronomical clock is the Strasbourg Cathedral clock, which dates to the 16th century in its current form, though earlier versions existed before that. It includes a perpetual calendar, an orrery showing the positions of the planets, and automata that perform at certain times. The level of detail and mechanical complexity is astonishing, especially considering the tools and knowledge available at the time. These clocks were built by teams of craftsmen working over many years, often across generations. They were funded by wealthy patrons or civic authorities who wanted to demonstrate their city's sophistication and learning. The clocks became sources of pride, attractions that drew visitors and scholars. They were also educational tools, making abstract astronomical concepts visible and tangible, helping people understand their place in the universe. In more recent times, the development of digital clocks has changed the way many people relate to timekeeping. Digital displays show the time as numbers, directly and unambiguously. There is no need to interpret the position of hands on a dial. The time is simply stated. This directness has advantages, particularly for quick glances or for people who find analog clock faces difficult to read. Digital clocks can also display additional information easily: the date, the day of the week, the temperature, alarms, and timers. They have become ubiquitous, appearing on microwaves, ovens, car dashboards, and countless other devices. Yet something is lost in the translation from analog to digital. An analog clock face gives you a sense of time's continuity, the hands sweeping through the hours, the visible relationship between past, present, and future. A digital display shows only the now, the current moment, with no visual context. Both have their place, and many people appreciate both for different reasons. The flip clock, a hybrid of sorts, enjoyed popularity in the mid-20th century and has seen a resurgence in recent years as a retro design element. Flip clocks use mechanical cards or tiles that flip over to reveal new numbers as each minute passes. The action is accompanied by a soft clicking sound, rhythmic and oddly satisfying. Watching a flip clock, you become aware of each minute as it turns, a discrete step rather than a continuous flow. There is something meditative about this, the way time is parceled out in visible, audible increments. The design is simple and elegant, and the mechanism, while mechanical, requires minimal maintenance. Flip clocks have a nostalgic quality now, evoking mid-century modern aesthetics, but they are also genuinely functional and pleasant to live with. Word clocks represent another creative approach to displaying time. Instead of numbers or hands, a word clock uses illuminated words to spell out the time in natural language. It is 9:30, for example. The clock face is a grid of letters, and the appropriate words light up to indicate the current time, usually in 5-minute increments. The effect is charming and surprisingly easy to read at a glance. Word clocks blur the line between timepiece and art object, between utility and decoration. They are conversation pieces, often prompting questions and smiles for visitors. They also make time feel a bit more human, more like something spoken than something measured. Time becomes a sentence, a phrase, a gentle announcement rather than a set of abstract numbers. Projection clocks take a different approach, casting the time onto a wall or ceiling using a small LED projector. This can be particularly useful in a bedroom, allowing you to check the time in the middle of the night without turning on a light or reaching for a device. The projection can often be adjusted for brightness and focus, and some models allow you to rotate or flip the image to suit your room layout. There is something almost magical about seeing the time floating on your ceiling, glowing softly in the darkness. It is unobtrusive yet available, a presence that does not demand attention but offers information when you want it. For people who wake frequently during the night, a projection clock can provide reassurance, a quick check that there is still time to sleep, that morning has not yet arrived. Clocks have also been integrated into furniture and architecture in creative ways. Grandfather clocks, also known as long case clocks, are tall, freestanding pieces that combine timekeeping with furniture design. They typically house a pendulum-driven movement and have a large, visible dial. The case is often made of fine wood, carved and finished to a high standard. A grandfather clock is a substantial presence in a room, both visually and orally. The tick of the pendulum and the chime of the hours become part of the soundscape of a home. These clocks are often passed down through generations, becoming family heirlooms that carry memories and history. Winding a grandfather clock, opening the case and pulling the chains to raise the weights, is a weekly ritual that connects you to the past, to the long line of people who have cared for this object before you. Mantle clocks, smaller and designed to sit on a shelf or fireplace mantle, were popular in the 18th and 19th centuries and remain so today. They are often more decorative than grandfather clocks, with elaborate cases made of wood, marble, or metal. Many feature chimes or striking mechanisms, marking the hours and sometimes the half hours or quarters. A mantle clock can become the focal point of a room, a piece that draws the eye and sets a tone of elegance and tradition. Like grandfather clocks, they require regular winding, and this act of care becomes part of the rhythm of life in a home. There is a satisfaction in keeping such a clock running, in maintaining a connection to a slower, more deliberate way of living. Cuckoo clocks, originating in the Black Forest region of Germany, are beloved for their whimsy and charm. On the hour, a small bird emerges from a door in the clock case, calls out the time with a distinctive cuckoo sound, and then retreats. Many cuckoo clocks also feature moving figures, such as woodcutters, dancers, or musicians, that animate when the clock strikes. The mechanisms are often driven by weights and regulated by a pendulum, making them true mechanical clocks despite their playful appearance. Cuckoo clocks have become iconic, symbols of craftsmanship and alpine culture. They bring a sense of liveliness and personality to timekeeping, a reminder that clocks can be entertaining as well as functional. The sound of the cuckoo, echoing through a house, is for many people a comforting and nostalgic sound, a link to childhood or to visits to grandparents' homes. The craft of making cuckoo clocks is still practiced in the Black Forest, where families have been building them for generations. The work is highly skilled, involving wood carving, mechanical assembly, and careful tuning of the bellows that produce the cuckoo sound. Each clock is a unique creation, even when made to a traditional pattern, because the carving and finishing are done by hand. The industry supports a network of small workshops and suppliers, each specializing in a particular component: the movements, the carvings, the weights, the chains. This distributed craftsmanship is a model of sustainable, community-based production, where skills are passed down and pride is taken in every detail. Owning a Black Forest cuckoo clock is not just about having a timepiece. It is about supporting a living tradition, a way of making things that honors both the past and the present. In Japan, there is a tradition of decorative clocks known as wadokei, which were used before the country adopted Western timekeeping in the late 19th century. The Japanese day was divided into 6 daylight hours and 6 nighttime hours. But because the length of day and night varies with the seasons, the hours themselves were not of fixed length. Wadokei were designed to accommodate this system, with adjustable mechanisms that could change the spacing of the hours as the seasons changed. This required considerable ingenuity and resulted in clocks that were both mechanically sophisticated and beautifully crafted. Many wadokei featured lacquered cases, brass fittings, and elegant calligraphy. They were objects of prestige, owned by samurai and wealthy merchants. Today, antique wadokei are rare and highly prized by collectors, valued both for their historical significance and their exquisite craftsmanship. The transition from traditional Japanese timekeeping to the Western system was part of the broader Meiji Restoration, a period of rapid modernization in the late 1800s. The adoption of fixed-length hours and the 24-hour day was seen as necessary for Japan to engage with the industrialized world. It was a profound cultural shift, changing not just how time was measured, but how people experienced their days. The old system, with its flexible hours tied to the natural rhythms of sunrise and sunset, gave way to the rigid structure of modern time. This change was not without loss, but it also opened new possibilities, allowing Japan to coordinate with global trade, communication, and transportation networks. The story of wadokei and their obsolescence is a poignant reminder that timekeeping is never just technical. It is always cultural, always tied to how a society understands itself and its place in the world. The invention of the balance spring in the 17th century brought a new level of precision to portable timepieces, and this tiny coiled component became one of the most important innovations in horology. The balance spring, also called the hairspring, works with the balance wheel to regulate the release of energy from the mainspring, creating a steady, predictable oscillation. Before its invention, watches could lose or gain hours each day. Afterward, they became reliable companions, accurate to within minutes. The spring itself is a marvel of delicate engineering, often thinner than human hair, coiled in a flat spiral that expands and contracts with perfect regularity. Watchmakers learned to temper these springs carefully, adjusting their elasticity and resilience so they would perform consistently across temperature changes and years of use. The balance spring transformed timekeeping from a public, stationary affair into something personal and portable, something you could carry in your pocket and trust. And there is something deeply calming about the fact that many of these springs are still made by hand, even today. Skilled artisans in Swiss ateliers and Japanese workshops coil fine wire into spirals, adjusting the pitch and tension with tools that have changed little in centuries. The process requires patience, steadiness, and an almost meditative focus. Each spring must be tested, adjusted, and tested again until it beats with the rhythm the watchmaker desires. This quiet, meticulous work connects modern horologists to their predecessors across the generations, a continuity of care and craft that spans hundreds of years. When you wear a mechanical watch, you carry with you not just a device, but a lineage of human attention and skill. The concept of the chronograph adds another layer of fascination to the world of timekeeping. A chronograph is a watch that can measure elapsed time independently of the main timekeeping function, essentially a stopwatch built into a wristwatch. The invention of the chronograph in the early 19th century allowed people to time events with precision, from horse races to scientific experiments. Inside a chronograph, additional gears and levers engage when you press a button, starting and stopping the measurement without disturbing the regular motion of the watch. The engineering required to achieve this is remarkably intricate, with components that must mesh perfectly and operate smoothly under the pressure of a fingertip. Yet the result feels effortless, a single click that sets time in motion or freezes it in place. There is something soothing about the clarity of this function, the way it isolates a moment and gives it shape and duration. Chronographs became especially important in aviation and motorsports, where precise timing could mean the difference between success and failure, safety and danger. Pilots use chronographs to calculate fuel consumption and navigation, while racing drivers timed laps and intervals with split-second accuracy. Over time, the chronograph evolved into a symbol of precision and performance, a tool that embodied the marriage of human ambition and mechanical reliability. Yet even as they served these high-stakes purposes, chronographs retained a certain elegance, their dials marked with sub-registers and scales that spoke of both function and beauty. To look at a chronograph is to see time not as a single flow, but as something that can be measured, marked, and understood in layers. The Rattrapante, or split-seconds chronograph, takes this concept even further. A Rattrapante has two chronograph hands that move together until you press a button, at which point one hand stops while the other continues. This allows you to time two events that start simultaneously but end at different moments, such as two runners in a race. The mechanism required to achieve this is extraordinarily complex, involving multiple levers, springs, and wheels that must operate in perfect harmony. Watchmakers consider the Rattrapante one of the most challenging complications to build, a test of both technical skill and artistic sensibility. Yet the experience of using one is simple and intuitive, a single press of a button that splits time into parallel streams. There's a quiet poetry in this, the idea that time can be both singular and multiple, unified and divided, all at once. The tourbillon is another complication that inspires both admiration and tranquility. Invented by Abraham Louis Breguet in 1795, the tourbillon is a rotating cage that holds the escapement and balance wheel, designed to counteract the effects of gravity on the watch's accuracy. When a watch is held in a single position for a long time, gravity can cause slight variations in the rate at which the balance wheel oscillates. The tourbillon solves this problem by rotating the entire escapement assembly, typically once per minute, so that any positional errors average out over time. The result is a watch that maintains its accuracy regardless of how it is oriented. Watching a tourbillon in motion is a mesmerizing experience. The delicate cage turning slowly and steadily, the balance wheel oscillating within it, all visible through a window in the dial. It is a dance of precision, a moving sculpture that serves both a practical purpose and an aesthetic one. Yet the tourbillon is also a reminder that not all complications are strictly necessary in the modern world. With the advent of quartz and atomic timekeeping, the positional errors that the tourbillon corrects have become almost negligible in practical terms. Today, the tourbillon is valued more for its beauty and the skill required to create it than for its functional advantage. It represents the pinnacle of traditional watchmaking, a challenge that master horologists undertake to demonstrate their artistry and dedication. There is something deeply calming about this. The idea that humans continue to create objects of extraordinary complexity and beauty not because they must, but because they can, because the act of creation itself has value. The tourbillon is a celebration of craft for its own sake, a testament to the human desire to make things that inspire wonder. The perpetual calendar is another complication that speaks to the ambition and ingenuity of watchmakers. A perpetual calendar watch automatically adjusts for the varying lengths of months and even accounts for leap years, displaying the correct date without manual correction for decades or even centuries. The mechanism required to achieve this is astonishingly intricate, involving a series of gears and cams that encode the rules of the Gregorian calendar into metal. One gear might have 48 teeth to represent the 4-year leap year cycle, while another has irregular teeth to account for months of different lengths. The watch knows that February has 28 days in most years and 29 in leap years, that some months have 30 days and others 31. It tracks this information continuously, silently, with no input from the wearer. To create a perpetual calendar is to build a machine that understands time not just as a sequence of hours and minutes, but as a complex pattern of days, months, and years. Wearing a perpetual calendar watch connects you to this pattern in a tangible way. Each morning when you glance at your wrist, you see not just the time but the date, the day of the week, the month, and often the phase of the moon. The watch becomes a companion that helps you navigate the temporal landscape of your life, marking the passage of seasons and the rhythm of the calendar. There is a quiet reassurance in this, the sense that the watch is keeping track of time's larger patterns, even as you focus on the immediate moment. The perpetual calendar reminds us that time is layered, that it moves in cycles within cycles, and that understanding these cycles can bring a sense of order and peace. The equation of time is a complication that reveals one of the most fascinating quirks of celestial mechanics. The equation of time is the difference between apparent solar time, as shown by a sundial, and mean solar time, as shown by a clock. Because the Earth's orbit is elliptical and its axis is tilted, the sun appears to move across the sky at a slightly irregular pace throughout the year. On some days, solar noon occurs a few minutes before clock noon, and on other days, a few minutes after. The difference can be as much as 16 minutes. A watch with an equation of time complication displays this difference, allowing the wearer to know exactly how much a sundial would differ from a clock at any given moment. It is a complication that bridges ancient and modern timekeeping, honoring the sun's actual motion while also acknowledging the convenience of mean time. There's something profoundly calming about the equation of time, the way it acknowledges that time is not as uniform as we sometimes imagine. The sun does not march across the sky with mechanical regularity. It speeds up and slows down, following the laws of orbital mechanics and the tilt of our planet. Our clocks smooth out these variations, creating a time that is predictable and consistent. But the equation of time reminds us that behind this convenience lies a more complex reality. To wear a watch with this complication is to carry a small piece of astronomical knowledge on your wrist, a reminder that timekeeping is always, at its root, a conversation between human needs and natural rhythms. The moon phase complication is one of the most visually beautiful and emotionally resonant features a watch can have. A moon phase display shows the current phase of the moon, typically through a small aperture in the dial behind which a disk rotates, painted with 2 moons against a starry background. As the disk turns, the moons move through the aperture, mimicking the waxing and waning of the real moon in the sky. The mechanism is relatively simple compared to other complications, usually driven by a gear with 59 teeth that advances once every 24 hours, completing a full cycle in 29.5 days, the length of a lunar month. Yet the effect is magical, a tiny window onto the night sky that connects the watch to the oldest form of timekeeping. Watching the moon phase indicator change day by day is a gentle reminder of the moon's steady presence in our lives. Even if clouds obscure the sky or city lights drown out the stars, the watch tells you whether the moon is new or full, waxing or waning. It reconnects you to a rhythm that humans have followed for millennia, a cycle that governs tides, influences cultures, and marks the passage of time in a way that feels both ancient and immediate. There's a deep tranquility in this, the sense that the watch on your wrist is in conversation with the heavens, that the small disk turning beneath the dial mirrors the great celestial body turning above. The minute repeater is perhaps the most enchanting of all complications, a watch that chimes the time on demand. When you activate a minute repeater, tiny hammers strike gongs inside the case, producing a series of musical notes that indicate the hours, quarter hours, and minutes. The sound is delicate and clear, a sequence of chimes that tells time through the sense of hearing rather than sight. Minute repeaters were invented in an era before electric lighting, when reading a watch dial in the dark was difficult or impossible. They allowed their owners to know the time at night without striking a match or lighting a candle. Today, They serve less practical purposes, but remain marvels of craftsmanship, their mechanisms requiring hundreds of hours to design, build, and tune. The sound of a minute repeater is extraordinarily soothing, a gentle cascade of notes that seems to slow time itself. Each chime is carefully tuned, the gongs shaped and adjusted until they produce tones that are harmonious and pleasing. The rhythm of the chimes follows a pattern. Low notes for the hours, a different tone for the quarter hours, and high notes for the minutes. Listening to a minute repeater is like hearing time itself speak, translating the abstract concept of duration into something sensory and beautiful. There is a meditative quality to this experience, a moment of focused attention in which the world narrows to the sound of tiny hammers striking metal, counting out the passage of moments. The creation of a minute repeater requires not just mechanical skill, but also musical sensitivity. The watchmaker must be part engineer, part musician, adjusting the gongs and hammers until the sound is perfect. The gongs are often made from hardened steel wire, coiled around the inside of the case, and their length, thickness, and tension all affect the tone they produce. Some watchmakers spend days fine-tuning a single repeater, listening to the chimes again and again, making minute adjustments until the sound achieves the clarity and warmth they seek. This process cannot be rushed or automated. It requires patience, care, and an ear trained by years of experience. The result is a watch that is as much a musical instrument as a timepiece, an object that brings together precision and art in a way that few other creations can. The grande sonnerie takes the concept of the striking watch even further. A grande sonnerie is a watch that chimes automatically, striking the hours and quarters as they pass, without any action required from the wearer. It is like having a miniature clock tower on your wrist, a constant companion that marks the passage of time with sound. The mechanism required for a grande sonnerie is extraordinarily complex, involving multiple barrels to store energy, intricate gear trains to control the striking sequence, and sophisticated safety mechanisms to prevent the chimes from interfering with the timekeeping. Building a grande sonnerie is considered one of the supreme challenges in watchmaking, a project that can take years to complete. Yet the experience of wearing one is surprisingly peaceful, the gentle chimes marking the hours like a soft heartbeat, a reminder that time is always moving, always present. There is something deeply reassuring about a watch that announces the time on its own, without being asked. It creates a rhythm to the day, a series of small auditory landmarks that help you stay oriented in time without constantly checking the dial. The chimes become part of the background of your life, a gentle accompaniment to your activities, like the ticking of a grandfather clock in a quiet room. In a world that often feels hurried and chaotic, a grande sonnerie offers a counterpoint, a reminder that time can be measured not just visually but orally, not just in space but in sound. It transforms timekeeping into a multisensory experience, one that engages not just the eyes but the ears, not just the mind but the emotions. The development of the wristwatch for women brought new dimensions to the art of timekeeping. Early wristwatches were considered feminine accessories, small and decorative, often more jewelry than tool. Men continued to carry pocket watches well into the 20th century, viewing wristwatches as impractical or unmanly. But women's wristwatches pioneered many innovations in miniaturization and design, pushing watchmakers to create movements that were smaller, thinner, and more elegant than ever before. These watches often featured gem-set cases, enamel dials, and delicate bracelets, blending timekeeping with adornment in ways that celebrated both function and beauty. Over time, as wristwatches became universal, the techniques developed for women's watches influenced the entire industry, proving that size and elegance need not come at the expense of precision. Today, the distinction between men's and women's watches has become more fluid, with many people choosing timepieces based on personal taste rather than traditional gender categories. Some prefer large, bold watches with complex dials and multiple functions, while others favor small, understated pieces that whisper rather than shout. The diversity of styles available reflects a broader understanding that timekeeping is deeply personal, that the watch you wear is an expression of your identity, your values, and your relationship with time itself. There is something calming about this freedom, the recognition that there is no single right way to measure or mark time. that each person can find the approach that resonates with them. The art of watch restoration offers another window into the world of timekeeping, a practice that combines technical skill with historical sensitivity. Vintage watches, some decades or even centuries old, often come to restorers in various states of disrepair, their movements corroded, their dials faded, their cases scratched and worn. The restorer's task is to bring these watches back to life, cleaning and repairing the movement, refinishing the dial, polishing the case, all while preserving as much of the original character as possible. This work requires not just mechanical knowledge, but also an understanding of history, materials, and the specific techniques used by watchmakers of different eras. A restorer must know how to work with obsolete tools and parts, sometimes fabricating components that are no longer available, using methods that have been passed down through generations. There is a meditative quality to watch restoration, the slow, careful process of disassembling a movement, cleaning each part, examining it for wear or damage, and then reassembling everything with fresh lubrication and precise adjustment. The restorer works with tiny components, often under magnification, in a quiet space where focus and patience are paramount. Each watch tells a story through its condition and construction, revealing the hands that made it and the lives it has accompanied. A scratch on the case might hint at a moment of carelessness or adventure, while wear patterns on the movement can show how the watch was used and cared for. Restoring a watch is an act of preservation, a way of honoring the past and ensuring that these small mechanical marvels can continue to function and be appreciated for years to come. The concept of watch collecting brings together many of the themes we have explored: history, craftsmanship, beauty, and the human relationship with time. Collectors seek out watches for many reasons. Some are drawn to the technical complexity of complications, others to the aesthetic appeal of certain designs, still others to the historical significance of particular models or makers. A collection might focus on a single brand or era, or it might range widely across different styles and periods, united only by the collector's personal taste and curiosity. Building a collection is a journey of discovery, a process of learning about horology, developing an eye for quality and detail, and connecting with a community of like-minded enthusiasts. Yet collecting is not just about acquisition. It is also about appreciation and stewardship. Collectors often see themselves as temporary custodians of these objects, preserving them for future generations, sharing knowledge about them, and ensuring that the stories they embody are not forgotten. There is a quiet satisfaction in this role, the sense that by caring for these watches, you are participating in a larger tradition, linking past and future through the objects you hold. A collection becomes a kind of personal museum, a curated selection of timepieces that reflect your interests, your values, and your evolving understanding of what makes a watch meaningful. And in the act of collecting, you engage with time in a unique way, not just measuring it or marking it, but contemplating it, celebrating it, and honoring the countless hours of human effort that have gone into understanding and mastering it. The digital revolution brought profound changes to timekeeping, but it also sparked a renewed appreciation for mechanical watches. As quartz and electronic devices became ubiquitous, offering perfect accuracy at minimal cost, mechanical watches began to be valued not for their precision, but for their artistry, their heritage, and the human skill they represent. This shift transformed watchmaking from a purely functional industry into one that also embraces art, culture, and tradition. Mechanical watches became symbols of craftsmanship in an increasingly automated world, objects that connect us to centuries of human ingenuity and to the slow, deliberate work of hands and minds. There is something deeply reassuring about this, the recognition that even in an age of digital perfection, there is still a place for the imperfect, the handmade, the human. The ticking of a mechanical watch has a quality that digital timekeeping cannot replicate, a physical presence that you can hear and feel. Each tick is the result of a small, controlled release of energy, a tiny explosion of motion that moves the hands forward by the smallest increment. This sound and sensation create a connection between the wearer and the watch, a reminder that the device on your wrist is alive in a sense, animated by the energy you provide when you wind it or by the motion of your arm if it is automatic. This connection is intimate and personal, a relationship between human and object that unfolds over time. The watch becomes a companion, something that accompanies you through your days, marking the hours with its steady rhythm, a small but constant presence in your life. The philosophy of slow time has gained attention in recent years, a counter-movement to the acceleration and fragmentation that characterize modern life. Slow time encourages us to be more mindful of how we experience duration, to resist the pressure to constantly multitask and hurry, and to create spaces in our lives where time can unfold at a more natural, human pace. Mechanical watches align beautifully with this philosophy. They're slower, more deliberate operation, a contrast to the instant updates of digital devices. Wearing a mechanical watch can be a small act of resistance, a way of asserting that time is not just something to be managed and optimized, but something to be experienced and savored. The watch becomes a tool for mindfulness, a reminder to pause, to breathe, to notice the present moment. The concept of horological complications as a form of meditation is not often discussed, but there is a meditative quality to understanding and appreciating the intricate mechanisms inside a watch. To study a complication is to enter a world of gears, levers, springs, and wheels, each part precisely shaped and positioned, each interaction carefully calculated. This world operates according to clear, logical principles, yet also contains beauty and elegance, a kind of mechanical poetry. Learning how a perpetual calendar or a minute repeater works requires patience and attention, a willingness to sit with complexity and gradually unravel it. This process can be deeply calming, a mental exercise that focuses the mind and quiets the noise of daily life. It is a form of contemplation, a way of engaging with a world that values understanding over speed, depth over breadth. The history of timekeeping is also a history of human curiosity and the desire to understand the universe. From ancient astronomers tracking the movements of celestial bodies to modern physicists measuring the vibrations of atoms, the quest to measure time accurately has driven countless discoveries and innovations. This quest has taught us about the nature of motion, gravity, energy, and even the structure of matter itself. Timekeeping is not just a practical necessity. It is a window into the fundamental workings of reality, a way of asking and answering questions about the universe and our place in it. There is something profoundly calming about this perspective, the recognition that the simple act of measuring time connects us to the deepest mysteries of existence. The role of timekeeping in navigation reminds us how deeply time and space are intertwined. Before the invention of accurate marine chronometers, sailors could determine their latitude by observing the sun or stars, but longitude remained elusive, a problem that cost countless lives and ships. The solution came through precise timekeeping. By comparing local solar time with the time at a known reference point, navigators could calculate their east-west position. This breakthrough transformed global exploration and trade, making it possible to cross oceans with confidence and precision. The chronometer became a lifeline, a device that translated the passage of time into knowledge of place. This connection between time and space continues in modern navigation systems, where atomic clocks and relativistic calculations enable GPS to pinpoint your location anywhere on Earth. Time, it turns out, is not just when you are, but also where you are. The experience of winding a mechanical watch is a small ritual that many wearers find deeply satisfying. Each morning, you take the watch in your hand, feel its weight and texture, and turn the crown, feeling the resistance of the mainspring as it tightens. This act requires a gentle touch, a sensitivity to the watch's feedback, knowing when to stop before overwinding. It is a moment of connection, a brief pause in the rush of the day, a time to be present with this small, intricate object. The ritual of winding creates a rhythm to your days, a regular touch point that anchors you in time. There is a mindfulness to this practice, a focus on the physical and the immediate that can be surprisingly calming and centering. Automatic watches, which wind themselves through the motion of the wearer's arm, offer a different kind of connection. They are powered by life itself, by the movements you make as you go about your day. Inside the watch, a rotor swings back and forth with each motion, winding the mainspring incrementally, storing energy that will keep the watch running. This means that as long as you wear the watch regularly, it never needs winding. It draws its energy from your activity, from the simple fact of your existence and movement. There is something beautiful about this symbiosis, the way the watch and the wearer sustain each other, the watch marking your time while you provide its energy. It creates a sense of partnership, a relationship that is both practical and poetic. The design of watch dials has evolved into an art form in its own right, with endless variations in layout, color, texture, and detail. Some dials are clean and minimalist, with simple markers and hands, offering a clarity that makes reading the time effortless and serene. Others are complex and layered, with multiple subdials, scales, and complications, creating a rich visual landscape that rewards close attention. The dial is the face of the watch, the part you interact with most directly, and its design profoundly affects your experience of the watch. A well-designed dial balances legibility with beauty, function with aesthetics, creating a surface that is both useful and pleasing to contemplate. The colors, the finish, the style of the numerals and hands, all of these choices contribute to the watch's character and the emotions it evokes. Dial finishes offer a subtle but significant dimension of watch design. A matte dial absorbs light, creating a soft, understated appearance that is easy on the eyes. A glossy dial reflects light, giving a brighter, more dynamic look that changes with the angle of view. Sunburst finishes, where fine grooves radiate from the center of the dial, create a shimmering effect that seems to glow and shift as the watch moves. Galoche dials feature intricate engraved patterns, often done by hand or with traditional machines, adding texture and depth that catch the light in complex ways. Each finish creates a different mood, a different way of experiencing the passage of time. Choosing a watch with a particular dial finish is a way of selecting not just a tool, but a companion whose appearance will affect your emotional state throughout the day. The hands of a watch, though small and simple, are crucial to its functionality and beauty. They must be clearly visible against the dial, yet elegant and proportionate, contributing to the overall harmony of the design. Watch hands come in countless styles: Dauphine, baton, leaf, sword, brigade, alpha, each with its own character and history. Some are filled with luminous material, so they glow in the dark, while others are blued through a careful heating process that creates a rich, deep color. The hands sweep across the dial in their endless circuit, marking seconds, minutes, and hours with grace and precision. Watching the second hand move can be hypnotic, a visual representation of time's flow that is both constant and fleeting. There's a quiet pleasure in this, the simple act of watching time pass, of seeing the abstract made visible and tangible. The concept of watch patina speaks to the way objects change and gain character over time. Patina is the wear and aging that occurs naturally as a watch is used and lived with. The slight fading of a dial, the development of a warm tone on brass or bronze components, the smoothing of edges from years of contact with skin and clothing. Some collectors prize patina highly, seeing it as evidence of a watch's history and authenticity, a record of the life it has lived. Others prefer watches in pristine condition, restored to their original appearance. There is no right answer, only personal preference, but there is something deeply calming about the acceptance of patina, the recognition that aging and change are natural and can even enhance beauty. A watch with patina tells a story, carries a history, and connects the present wearer to all those who have worn it before. The use of precious materials in watchmaking adds another layer of meaning and value. Gold, platinum, and other rare metals are prized not just for their monetary worth, but for their properties, their resistance to corrosion, their weight and feel, their warm glow. A gold watch case feels different on the wrist than steel, heavier and softer, a tangible luxury. Platinum is even denser, with a cool, subtle sheen that speaks of understated elegance. These materials age gracefully, developing a patina that enhances rather than diminishes their beauty. Using precious materials in a watch is a statement of value and permanence, a recognition that this object is meant to last, to be cherished and passed down. There is a quiet confidence in this, a sense that the watch is not a disposable commodity, but an enduring treasure. The art of enameling has been used in watchmaking for centuries to create dials of extraordinary beauty and durability. Enamel is a form of glass that is applied as a powder to a metal base and then fired at high temperatures, fusing into a smooth, hard surface. The process requires great skill, as the enamel must be applied in thin layers and fired multiple times, with each firing risking cracks, bubbles, or color shifts. The result, however, is a dial that is luminous, deep, and resistant to fading, capable of retaining its beauty for centuries. Enamel dials are often found on high-end watches and antique timepieces, their surfaces glowing with a richness that modern printing techniques cannot quite replicate. To look at an enamel dial is to see a surface that has been transformed by fire, a material that bridges the worlds of art and craft. The tradition of hand engraving on watch cases and movements adds a personal, artistic touch that makes each piece unique. Engravers use tiny chisels and burins to cut patterns into metal, creating designs that range from simple geometric motifs to elaborate scenes and flourishes. This work is painstaking and requires years of training to master, as a single slip can ruin hours of effort. Yet the results are breathtaking, transforming a functional object into a work of art. Some watchmakers engrave the movement itself, adding decorative flourishes to bridges and plates that will only be seen when the case back is opened, a hidden beauty that speaks to the maker's pride and dedication. There is something deeply satisfying about this, the knowledge that beauty has been created even in places where it will rarely be seen, an offering to the craft itself rather than to external display. The concept of a watch as a companion through life is a theme that resonates with many wearers. A watch purchased for a milestone, a graduation, a wedding, a significant birthday, becomes associated with that moment and the emotion surrounding it. Over the years, the watch accompanies you through other milestones, other joys and sorrows, becoming a silent witness to your life's journey. It marks the hours you spend with loved ones, the moments of triumph and challenge, the quiet times of reflection. In this way, a watch becomes more than an object. It becomes a repository of memory and meaning, a tangible link to your past, and a companion into your future. There is a deep comfort in this continuity, the sense that amid all the changes and uncertainties of life, this small object remains constant, ticking steadily, marking time with unwavering fidelity. The practice of passing down watches through generations creates a lineage of timekeeping, a tangible connection between past, present, and future. A watch that belonged to a grandparent or parent carries with it stories, memories, and a sense of continuity. When you wear such a watch, you're not just marking your own time, but also honoring the time of those who came before you. You become part of a chain, a link between generations, and the watch becomes a symbol of family, heritage, and the passage of time across lives. This tradition imbues the watch with emotional significance that far exceeds its material value. It transforms timekeeping into something deeply personal and relational, a way of staying connected to loved ones even after they are gone. The sound of a watch ticking in a quiet room is one of the most soothing sounds in the world of timekeeping. It is a gentle, rhythmic pulse, a reminder that time is moving forward in small, manageable increments. The ticking creates a sense of order and predictability, a steady beat that can be calming and grounding, especially in moments of stress or uncertainty. Some people find that the sound of a ticking watch or clock helps them focus or relax, providing a gentle auditory backdrop that quiets the mind. In the stillness of night, the tick of a watch on a bedside table can be a comforting presence, a small voice saying that all is well, that time is passing as it should, that there is no need to rush or worry. The development of silent or near-silent movements represents a different approach to the same goal of tranquility. Some watchmakers have created movements that tick so quietly they are almost inaudible, or that use a deadbeat seconds mechanism where the hand moves in smooth, continuous motion rather than discrete ticks. These watches offer a different kind of peace, the absence of sound rather than its presence, a visual flow of time that is unaccompanied by auditory markers. The choice between a ticking watch and a silent one is deeply personal, reflecting individual preferences about how we want to experience time's passage. Both approaches have their own beauty in their own way of contributing to a sense of calm. The philosophy of horological minimalism emphasizes simplicity, clarity, and the essential functions of timekeeping. A minimalist watch might have a plain dial with no numerals, just simple markers, and 2 hands for hours and minutes. The case might be thin and unadorned, the strap plain leather or steel. The beauty of such a watch lies in its restraint, in what it chooses not to include. Every element is considered and purposeful, with no unnecessary decoration or complication. This approach creates a watch that is easy to read, comfortable to wear, and visually serene. It reflects a broader philosophy that values quality over quantity, essence over excess, and the idea that sometimes less truly is more. Wearing a minimalist watch can be a daily reminder of these values, a small practice of simplicity in a complex world. The opposite approach, maximalism in watchmaking, celebrates abundance, complexity, and the sheer joy of mechanical possibility. A maximalist watch might feature multiple complications, a richly decorated dial, an elaborately finished movement visible through a transparent case back, and a case adorned with engravings or gem setting. These watches are celebrations of craftsmanship, showcasing everything a watchmaker can do, pushing the boundaries of what is possible within the constraints of a wristwatch. They are exuberant, bold, and unabashedly impressive. There's a place for this approach too, a recognition that beauty and satisfaction can come from complexity and abundance, as well as from simplicity. The diversity of approaches in watchmaking reflects the diversity of human temperament and taste, ensuring that there is a watch for every personality and preference. The experience of visiting a watchmaker's workshop offers a glimpse into a world of focused craftsmanship and quiet dedication. These workshops are often small, filled with specialized tools, tiny parts, and the soft sounds of work. The gentle scrape of a file, the click of tweezers, the hum of a polishing machine. The watchmaker sits at a bench, often under magnification, working with components so small they seem almost impossibly delicate. The atmosphere is one of concentration and care, a space where time slows down and attention narrows to the task at hand. Visiting such a workshop, or even just imagining it, can be a calming experience, a reminder that there are still places in the world where work is done slowly, carefully, and with deep respect for the materials and the craft. The tradition of watchmaking schools ensures that the knowledge and skills of horology are passed on to new generations. These schools, found in Switzerland, Germany, Japan, and other countries, teach students the fundamentals of watchmaking, from basic repairs to the creation of complex movements. The training is rigorous and hands-on, requiring patience, precision, and a genuine passion for the craft. Students learn not just techniques, but also the history and philosophy of timekeeping, gaining an appreciation for the tradition they are joining. Graduates of these schools become the next generation of watchmakers, restorers, and designers, carrying forward a lineage that stretches back centuries. There is something deeply reassuring about this continuity, the knowledge that the craft is being preserved and renewed, that the art of timekeeping will continue into the future. The role of watchmaking in small communities, particularly in the Swiss Jura and other traditional centers, has shaped entire cultures and economies. For centuries, watchmaking provided livelihoods for families and villages, with different households specializing in different aspects of production. One might make cases, another dials, another movements. This distributed system, known as établissage, created a network of artisans who collaborated to produce finished watches. The tradition fostered a culture of precision, pride, and mutual support, values that continue to shape these communities today. Even as the industry has modernized and consolidated, the legacy of this tradition remains, a reminder that watchmaking is not just an industry, but a way of life, a craft that connects people to each other and to a shared heritage. The concept of a watch as a tool for mindfulness brings us back to the fundamental question of what it means to keep time. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the current moment, aware of your thoughts, feelings, and surroundings without judgment. A watch can support this practice by helping you stay oriented in time without the distractions of smartphone. No notifications, no emails, no social media, just the simple, clear display of the current time. Glancing at a watch is a brief, focused action that does not pull you into a vortex of information and distraction. It allows you to check the time and then return your attention to what you were doing, maintaining your presence and focus. In this way, a watch becomes a tool for living more intentionally, for staying grounded in the present even as you navigate the demands and schedules of daily life. The aesthetics of watch photography have become an art form in their own right, with enthusiasts and professionals capturing the beauty of timepieces in stunning detail. A well-photographed watch reveals textures, reflections, and subtleties that might be missed in casual observation. The play of light on a sunburst dial, the intricate finishing of a movement, the way a case curves and catches the light. These images invite contemplation, allowing you to appreciate the watch as both a functional object and a work of art. Looking at watch photography can be a meditative experience, a way of slowing down and noticing details, of finding beauty in small things. It is a reminder that the world is full of objects that reward close attention, that there is artistry and care in places we might not expect. The community of watch enthusiasts, connected through forums, social media, and in-person gatherings, creates a space for shared passion and learning. Members of this community range from casual admirers to serious collectors, from beginners to experts, but they are united by a love of watches and a curiosity about horology. They share photographs, discuss technical details, debate the merits of different brands and models, and support each other in their collecting journeys. This community is generally welcoming and generous, with experienced members happy to share knowledge and newcomers eager to learn. Participating in this community can be a source of connection and belonging, a way of engaging with others who appreciate the same things you do. There is a quiet joy in this shared enthusiasm, the sense that you are part of something larger than yourself, a global network of people who find meaning and beauty in the measurement of time. The future of mechanical watchmaking is a subject of much discussion and speculation. In an age of smartwatches and ubiquitous digital time, some wonder whether mechanical watches will survive. Yet the evidence suggests that they will not only survive but thrive, precisely because they offer something that digital devices cannot: a connection to history, a celebration of craftsmanship, and an experience of time that is tactile, personal, and human. Mechanical watches have become objects of desire not in spite of their anachronism, but because of it. They represent a counterbalance to the digital, the disposable, the instant. They remind us that some things are worth doing slowly, carefully, and by hand. As long as there are people who value these qualities, there will be a place for mechanical watches in the world. And so we find ourselves at the end of this gentle journey through the world of timekeeping and clocks, having explored the vast landscape of how humans have measured, marked, and understood time. We have traveled from ancient sundials to atomic clocks, from towering clock towers to tiny wristwatches, from the rhythms of the heavens to the vibrations of atoms. We have seen how timekeeping is both a practical necessity and a profound expression of human curiosity, creativity, and care. We have discovered that clocks and watches are not just tools but companions, artworks, and links to the past and future. As you rest now, let these ideas settle gently in your mind. Let the image of a balance wheel oscillating, a pendulum swinging, a moon phase disc turning, bring you a sense of calm and order. Time is always moving, always present, a steady companion through all the moments of your life. There is no need to chase it or fear it. It will carry you forward at its own pace, reliable and constant. The clocks and watches we have explored are testaments to the human desire to understand this flow, to mark it and measure it, to find beauty and meaning in its passage. If you are still awake, know that there are always more stories to explore, more wonders to discover in the quiet corners of science and history. But if sleep is calling, let it come. Let the gentle rhythm of time's passage lull you into rest, knowing that when you wake, time will still be there, steady and true, ready to accompany you through another day. Rest well, and let the peaceful world of time keeping watch over your dreams.